focusing in a little bit more. So I want to talk a little bit about something that happened at lunch. Actually, I was eating lunch. Someone came to me and they said, you know, Dante, you got a tough job ahead of you. You know, I kind of feel sorry for you. I said, well, why? And the person said that, you know, you're fairly new and you're kind of sticking your neck out with this general plan. And respectfully, I said to him, I really don't, I see it a little bit differently. I see myself as a listener first. And that's pretty much what we've been doing. Over the last year, we probably talked to 900, almost 1,000 people, and really talking about what do you guys see for the future of Half Moon Bay. And my job is really to bring that information to the GPAC, to the Planning Commission, to the City Council, and see if we can figure out a way to kind of bridge that gap between the technical information and analysis that we have, the community aspirations and community goals, and see if there is a balance. And that's what we're doing tonight. We're laying it out and we're letting the community pretty much decide. So we've heard, I was lucky enough to attend a meeting actually that was focusing in on meeting open space and different things. And there's been a lot of community comment and concern about that. And we've heard you loud and clear, absolutely. And it's been expressed in the guiding principles. It's been expressed in the surveys. People have said that they value most open space. They value the small town character of Half Moon Bay. And I think actually all of the proposals or concepts that we're going to be talking about tonight really show that. Really show that that's something that people value. But to do my job as being a listener, I feel it's important for me to listen to all the voices of the community. People also said that they have concerns about traffic and circulation. And is there something that we can do to address that? We had a meeting with our seniors. And our seniors said, there's issues about aging in place. There's issues about affordability. Can you guys look at that? Is there something that you can do for us? We had a meeting and we met with the Farm Bureau, San Mateo County. And we've been meeting kind of one-on-one with people in the agricultural community, really talking about agricultural uses and what's needed to sustain them for the future, for the next 20 years, and really trying to understand that. And is there anything that we should do or could be doing about that? But they brought to light some things that we need to consider, and we're going to submit that to you for your consideration. In your packet, you guys have your the mission statement of the GPAC. I don't know, did everyone get that? GPAC members? So the mission statement kind of says, is it in this packet, Bruce? Yes. Okay.
It gets this.
Yes. Did it get distributed?
I never, yeah.
Okay. Let me grab it. So this is a thing essentially that all of you guys sign when you volunteered to sign up for the GPAC. And I think it's helpful to really kind of it's helpful for me to remind myself about the purpose of why I'm serving on things. And you'll see in the mission, there's kind of a couple things that popped out to me. Among the other things, it talked about the mission of the GPAC being promoting a balanced consideration of a range of perspectives. It said, encouraging a broader community participation. And so what that means to me is that just like me and just like our staff, you guys are also listeners. And you're also the ones to keep us on task to include perspectives that you're hearing in the community. We put up the goal for the meeting tonight, just to kind of make it clear. I'm not sure if everybody can see it. But what we're going to be doing is we're going to be presenting and talking about 3 themes. And these themes were informed by all the work that we've done over the last year. And we can ask questions and kind of talk about why once we get into that. But we're asking the GPAC to provide us some input on the themes and allow us to go back and let the planning team do some technical analysis, and then let's put it out to the community for the community to comment. You know, there's a lot of people here tonight. Thank you for coming. The community will get multiple bites at the apple, I assure you. We have workshops, we have surveys, we're going to do neighborhood meetings. We're going to try to talk to anybody who wants to talk to us within the next several months. But tonight, what we're asking the GPAC to do is just provide comments on these concepts. And it's interesting because they look very pretty, but they're really concepts. I know that that's, you know, people may not believe me, but they really are concepts for us to discuss. And so we'll get a little bit deeper into that. So again, kind of with this picture that was kind of fuzzy. I remember one of my first meetings, Ed talked to me, and we were talking about we're asking questions like, what do you want to see in Half Moon Bay? You know, how does Half Moon Bay need to improve in the next 20 years? And Ed was like, come on, Dante, I mean, what are we doing? Where are you going here? We know where you're going. Let's go. Let's get it on. You know, let's talk about the real issues. And so, for a number of months, I think people have been wanting to talk about the real issues. It's time. It's time for us to talk about the real issues. And so we're starting tonight. And each phase we go through, the picture is going to get a little bit more in focus, a little bit more in focus. When we did our guiding principles, got a little bit more focused. When we approved our existing conditions, a little bit more focused. This is just another step. This is not the general plan. I doubt if any of these, just as they are, is going to be forwarded to the Planning Commission or City Council for approval. Not how it works. We're just asking you, what parts do you like? We're going to be asking the public a little bit later, what parts do you like? What parts don't you like? And then we will work through. So, just to kind of give you an idea or sense of where this is going after we have this meeting tonight, we will be doing this kind of engagement process with the community that will last several months. We will be having study sessions. In fact, we have one, I think, December 9th, Bruce?
Yes.
With the Planning Commission. And so we're not asking Planning Commission to decide anything. We're just getting them up to speed. Here's the analysis, here's what people are saying. And it also gives all of you an opportunity to come to that meeting and let the Planning Commission know what you think about these ideas. We're also scheduling another study session for the City Council on January 20th. Same thing, not asking them to decide anything, move forward with anything. Here's what we've been talking about, and allows the public an opportunity to speak. After we finish the process of community outreach and input, we're going to come back to the GPAC, and we're going to say to the GPAC, this is what we've learned after these several months of going out to the community, our workshops, our workbooks, our surveys, all of this stuff we've been doing over the last several months. This is what we learned. And then we'll talk about a preferred alternative that will then be forwarded for consideration to the Planning Commission. And that's another whole process where the public will get to provide input, talk directly to the Planning Commission before it even gets to the City Council. And then that's another whole process. So there's a long runway with this. I don't want to give anybody the impression tonight's the night, you know, we need to decide tonight. There's nothing being decided tonight. But we do value your input, and we look forward to a very productive meeting. So to facilitate our discussion, Linda Blong is with the Public Dialogue Consortium, and she's worked with us in the past. She's going to be leading us through the presentation. Thank you.
Part of it. Good evening. Hey, GPAC. Remember me? I was here at the very beginning reporting on the public participation piece. Good to see you after 5 meetings. And wow, this is a lot of people here. It's so great to be in a community where people are passionate about their community. It's like such an honor. Thank you for all coming. And I know you all have a lot of interest in this. I think Dante laid it out. The truth is there's no decisions tonight, so that doesn't mean that there isn't plenty of discussion to be had. But really, we're pretty early in the process, the decision-making side of the process. So there's a lot of process about gathering input, and as Dante said, things get narrowed. And the planners do their magic. I'm not a planner, so I look at these maps and go, wow, that's a lot of work gone into these options for consideration. But the reason that they're done that way is so that people can really make a picture of what's possible and beginning to think about what the possibilities are, what the various features might be of a plan that would come down the line, and then how those might be organized. But as Dante said, the purpose of this tonight is to just understand the themes, make sure that they are consistent with the guiding principles, because the guiding principles come directly from the input from the people. So the guiding principles need to inform everything that happens. So we need to check the themes as they currently are laid out to make sure they're consistent with the guiding principles, and then also to look for something that's missing. So they wouldn't necessarily need to be included in all 3 of them, but if there's something that the public's been hearing, public's been telling the GPAC and the city, and it's not been included in any one of the 3, then we have to start identifying what that might be. I'm not sure that there is. I don't know enough about it, the planning, to know. But that's what we want to focus on. And the purpose of that is so that these 3 options can go forward, as Dante said, for some additional technical analysis, but more importantly, as a set of a range of options, so that when the community gets to work with starting to provide input on a preferred option, they have a breadth of things to look at and consider. And that's what we call public deliberation, when the public looks at various options and weighs the trade-offs and then provides input based on some thoughtful discussion about what the options are. If they don't have options presented, if you don't have options presented to you, then you can't really make sense of what needs to go into the preferred plan. So that's the idea, to get some good options on the table with a breadth of features included in them, and that reflect the guiding principles. Does that make sense? So, especially for the GPAC. Does everybody get that? So the process is, what we're going to do this evening is, you have the maps up there that you've already taken a bit of a look at, but we're going to have a presentation from Rajiv and Peter, who are from the planning team, and they will be walking through the 3 themes. And while they're doing that, after each theme, we can pause briefly for clarifying questions. That means questions that's like, I didn't get what you said about this. Not, I don't like this, or I like that. We're not there yet. It's more, I don't get it. Can you please explain that again? And so clarifying questions will happen during the presentation. Then after the presentation, and this is the GPAC's meeting, we'll have a discussion about those 2 questions that I mentioned, and they're in your agenda. That is, do they reflect the guiding principles? And what's missing? What needs to be, is there something that needs to be added or tweaked on these themes before they go to the analysis and to public deliberation? So that's the process for this evening. The discussion then will go out for public comment, because y'all might have something to say about those 2 questions. The public comment will be about those 2 questions also. Guiding principles, and do they actually have, is there something missing? And then after the public comment, then the GPAC can talk again in case there was something that came in that you missed and you'd like to include that in your recommendations or any additions to the themes. And then we'll close with confirming what we have, the input that we have, and take it to the next step. Again, the next steps being technical analysis and preparation of materials for the public deliberation. So I'd like to ask, are there any questions at this point about the process itself? What we're doing tonight and what's happening next?
What is the GPAC? Just for those of us who don't know.
Thank you for asking. That's the General Plan Advisory Committee, and that's this group.
And how are they appointed?
I'm going to defer.
They were appointed by the city council, and there was an open process, and they were selected based on certain criteria, I think, representing different constituencies in the community, across various factors, open space, real estate, community, at large, environmental groups, and so forth. So there was a process, and they were appointed.
And there's a good document that was just handed out that describes what their mission statement is and that kind of sort of the parameters of the group. Thanks for asking. That's a great question. Any other questions about the process, what we're doing here tonight? You got it. Okay.
Thank you. I'm Rajiv Bhatia from Dragon Bhatia Urban Planners. I just want to add to the response to the question that you asked. The General Plan Advisory Committee is a recommending body. It's not a decision-making body. Their role is to make recommendations to the Planning Commission and the City Council, and they are the decision makers. So, to the extent there is consensus that will be forwarded, if there is a difference of opinion, we don't sit here and vote. The chart explicitly states they will not be voting on things. So we just present the input to the Planning Commission saying there are differences on this point. So that's their charge, and their charge is also to listen to what people say at large to the workshops, and not just represent their own constituency, but represent the city at large, and the citizens at large. In terms of the time frame of what Linda talked about, our goal is, our hope is that we want to have public workshops on these alternatives sometime at the end of January or February of next year. So based on what a preferred plan looks like, there will be public workshops, certainly one during a weekend morning perhaps, one weekday evening, and other neighborhood scale workshops. So all that will happen before it comes back to this body. So this body will not be sitting and deliberating and trying to combine these or whatever before that happens. These three themes here, we call them themes or concepts, have been developed to fulfill the guiding principles, and I think, I'm not sure if all of you have seen the guiding principles. I see this gentleman holding a copy of it in his hand. And if you don't have a copy, you can pick one up. There are several of these out there. And these guiding principles were formulated with all the input that Andre mentioned, that we spoke to 900 people. People made surveys, and there are copies of that outside, and there's a board out there for that. So with a lot of public input and endorsement by the GPAC and the Planning Commission and the City Council, those guiding principles were developed. These are pictorial representations of how those principles would play out in the landscape in terms of land use, in terms of transportation, open space, and so on. We had, at the packet that was given out to the GPAC, had descriptions of what these are, text descriptions, also a table outlining how different components, such as downtown, open space, transportation, and so on, compare across these. And what we have done is, we have also prepared now an 11 by 17 sheet of paper. And there are certainly copies for the GPAC and some copies that can be distributed. You can share those to community members, that'll be great. Showing how those 6 guiding principles translate into each one of the themes that we have in terms of open space, transportation, small town, character, and so on. I do see a hand raised. I don't want to ignore you, but
That's also all on your website. I think people.
it is on the website as well.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Reminder.
So, while Linda is, giving those out, I also want to talk a little bit about what these maps mean, what these colors on these maps mean. We went through a process of analyzing existing conditions. We had economists, we had biologists, we had people specializing in geology and all kinds of disciplines that you can think of. So we went through, we analyzed what the existing conditions were, what the opportunities are in the community, and where we can expect new development to happen, what are the principal open spaces we need to think about, what are the transportation topics we need to think about. Based on that, we developed what are called opportunity sites. These are sites that are most likely to develop in the next, is it 25 years? The horizon of the plan is 2040, so over the next 25 years, which is a fairly long time. And those sites are shown in brighter colors on these maps. So in gray, we are showing existing development that is not likely to change. Now, this is our best guess of where new development will happen. Obviously, we are planners, we are not forecasters. Ultimately, the development is going to be dependent by not just the designations that we provide, but also the willingness of the property owner himself or herself to be developing, their site. Unless they're interested, this development will not happen. So while we anticipate that these are the sites, and they're a little different in each one of the themes, will develop, not all of those might in the next 25 years. And conversely, some sites that we do not think might develop may actually end up developing. So that always happens. But this is our best guess as of now, given the designation that we are planning for, or where development will happen. In terms of colors, so we talked about the bright colors being the places where development will happen. Generally, these are standard planning colors. Not sure how many of you are used to looking at standard planning colors, so I'll just quickly explain. Yellows are residential colors. So a lighter yellow means like a very low density residential, and that might be a house sitting on an acre, to low density, which would be a typical single family kind of a subdivision, to medium or high density, which might be townhomes or some multifamily. So the yellows represent the residential spectrum. The purple color is mixed use, and mixed use could mean it has commercial uses, it has residential uses on it. Those are these purple areas over here. Or downtown, Main Street, that's also a mixed use environment. Then we have visitors serving commercial uses. Those are this color over here. And that is hotels, ancillary retail that serves the visitors. So things like restaurants and things of that nature. That's visitor serving commercial. The salmon color is office. The dog gate color is industrial or quasi-industrial uses, and blue is public. Green is open space, and there are different spectrums of open space. There is existing open space, future park, which is the brightest green, the darkest green color, and then open space for conservation. This might be open space for habitat protection, open space for visual resources, but that's not recreational, active recreational open space. You would put a field on that space, but it's open space nonetheless. And then, so those are the colors, and those colors are consistent across the different maps. They do not change from a map to map. So is that sort of clear before I launch into the themes descriptions themselves? Okay, I see the committee nodding their head. So we have these three themes, and they have names so that we can refer to them as we talk about them, but there is more to these themes than just the names that we have ascribed to them. So the first one is the downtown focus one, and for reference sake, we also have the existing general plan here. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about that, but just to describe to you, the largest opportunity areas in the existing general plans are the ones in this gray color here. These are the planned unit development areas. And we've had a lot of discussion about that. There's a planning process people have to go through to be doing development in those areas, but a majority of our opportunities are actually within those planned unit development areas, although there are several bigger sites that are outside of those areas as well. So the downtown focus plan, which we also call a compact urban form theme, tries to locate most of the new uses within half a mile. This is a half a mile radius from the center of Kelly Avenue and Main Street. And a half a mile distance is typically what a normal person would walk within 10 minutes. So we would try to locate a significant portion of the development within a 10-minute walk of downtown, and that resonates with what Dante was saying, is people, when they talk about aging in place, and we have housing for seniors and others, they have the ability to be connected to downtown, to services, to commerce, and they can walk to those. And much of the rest of the development will be within a 1 mile radius. So we anticipate generally everything to be within a 15 to 20 minutes of downtown, a walk. And we're using Kelly Avenue as a connection between these new neighborhoods to the east of downtown, as well as to the west, with a visitor-serving use located at the end of Kelly Avenue, and Kelly Avenue becoming one of the principal connections between these amenities. One of the things that I should also talk about is that there are some items that are actually common to all of the themes. There are some differences, there are some things that are common as well. So we would actually, in this theme, for example, we'll have a much more expanded open space system along the shoreline. And you can see, currently, it exists only in a portion of it, and not all of it is actually developed as open space. So we would actually, through this downtown focus effort, have that open space permeate, be there throughout the extent of the coastline. And we can do that partly by having compact development here, which frees us up to have open space or remaining agricultural uses elsewhere. So the footprint of development is smaller. And for that reason, we may need slightly higher densities in all of these. When we talk about slightly higher densities, we're not talking San Mateo densities even. We're talking Half Moon Bay densities. We're not talking about anything that's more than 2 to 3 stories in height. So everything is modest, generally single story, some 2 to 3 story development. That's another theme that's consistent across all concepts. So the open space idea, the idea of developing open space linkages along, for example, Frenchman Street or Pilarcitos Creek. Those are ideas that are common to all of the concepts. They are there in this plan as well. The Naomi Bettridge Trail along Highway 1, the Coastal Trail, those are all part of this concept here. And they are part of every other concept here as well. So are ideas about bikeway linkages, pedestrian linkages, those are common to all of the concepts as well. So this is downtown Main Street. You can see that over here. And I sort of just described the overall concept to you here. And you can see there's a lot of green outside the half mile and 1 mile radius here in this concept. And that is a blow up of this central area across over here. That's the half mile radius, that's the 1 mile radius. And obviously we'll be working through the details as such that when we develop new open spaces, that's a new park, for example, along the creek. When we develop this, there is new development out there. We'll be seeking to create linkages from the new development to the parkland, and also doing that in a manner where existing development will have opportunity to go through and connect to these open spaces that will be created. So we are trying to get people linked to open space, and not just the new development, but existing development as well. That's sort of a principal consideration here. We have concept number 2. It's called corridors and connections. And the idea is to envision this northern portion of the city as a corridor, not just along Highway 1, but along its profile, extending across over here. And then this was an idea that germinated here at the GPAC itself, is to look at nodes, new commercial nodes along Highway 1, where we can capture some commercial amenities for travelers who go through across Highway 1, but also locate new neighborhood serving commercial uses in these nodes. So people at the very northern end of town, for example, don't have to go to one of the shopping centers close to downtown or Main Street itself for everyday amenities. So we will be developing 2 new commercial nodes surrounded by somewhat modestly high density residential uses, as well as new open space systems. You can see that over here. And then we would also look to, and this is a blow up of that over here. And again, we would look to create connections with existing development over here. And in here, we also have modest scale, mini Funnel Boulevard idea, which is to connect the neighborhoods through modest roadway improvements. So when you do a new development, you connect to streets that exist on either side. So it's not a full-blown connection that goes all the way across the city, but there'll be more and greater linkages across on the east side here as well. Again, the idea of visitor serving use at the terminus of Kelly Avenue over here, greatly expanded open space system is common to this as well. This color here, these are the bluffs over here. You can see that. And then this is the connection along the William Cedar Street.
Would that be a road or a path?
No, this is just walking, biking at the most. It's green. There's no road up there at all.
Thanks for the clarifying question.
The roads are shown in this dash color across over here, and these are all very modest scale, neighborhood scale roads connected. Then we have the last concept here called showcasing the coast. And this directly responds to what we heard from the people, that Half Moon Bay's principal assets are its coastal setting and small town charm. One of the things we heard from people is that we need to be able to better connect development and the coast. I mean, not only do we need more open space, we need it to be accessible. We need to be able to walk, hike along it. And at one of the meetings that we had a meeting in the Spanish-speaking community about a month and a half ago. We heard, from younger members of the audience as well, they'd like to see recreational amenities out there along the coastline as well. So when they recreate, they can enjoy the shoreline as well. So this concept is called showcasing the coast. So where we would locate, much more enhanced open space, as well as new development along the coastline. And when we say along the coastline, it's not up to the coast. I mean, this is the scale over here. This is a quarter mile. This is an eighth of a mile across over here. So it's really far set back from the coast. But the idea is that if you have a parcel that goes across like that, if these parcels do go deep all the way to over here, you would develop on a portion of it and dedicate the rest as permanent open space or open space easements or something of that nature. And those are details we will need to work out once we know what the open space system is that we seek to achieve. So that's the idea, is to have the open space, have different kinds of uses, including some commercial uses. So for example, you can see a star over here. The idea is that if there's a hotel or there's some other commercial node over here, there could be a cafe overlooking this open space spine, and you as a resident can go out there, enjoy a cup of coffee, look across the trail and to the ocean. So that's the idea of connecting the systems. We do have, there's an abandoned right-of-way. It's Railroad Avenue in a portion, and the idea is to have some kind of a connection here between existing development and new development. We're not sure exactly what that connection is. It could be a pedestrian and bike connection. It need not be a roadway. But that's the conceptual connection. We're calling it an active connection across the road. It's definitely a ped and bike connection. We do not know or think it's a roadway connection. It's definitely not a 4-lane road. I can totally clarify. And these stars here show different kinds of activity centers across over here, and they've shown a variety of improvements to existing corridors such as Highway 1. We're anticipating adding bike lanes, walking trails in all of the concepts along Highway 1, for example. Peter, did I miss anything here?
I'll try to,
Okay,
mop
so
up
Peter
my
is
notes.
going to quickly walk us through, quickly highlight how these principles have been achieved in these themes here.
Quick question, Chief.
Yeah.
The symbol of Highway 1, it looks like there's little dots along it.
Yeah.
What's that symbol?
That is an idea of improving it with trees, walkways,
Over on that one below.
boulevard. So the idea is calling it a boulevard. So we're not adding traffic lanes, but we're adding trees, landscaping. There are overhead utilities. We would remove those, add bike lanes and so on.
Got it.
So spend more time on boulevard.
Quickly, just one more similar clarifying question. What's meant by strengthening the spine of Kelly?
Oh, strengthening the spine. It means it could be one of the ways in which we walk from downtown to the coastline. I think one of the things that we heard roundly, from everybody was that people don't know Half Moon Bay has a downtown when visitors come in, but they get to downtown, they don't know how to access the coast from there. So this is a pedestrian bicycle emphasized connection between the coast and additional bike lanes, yeah. Anything else?
I got a question.
Sure.
On each of these three plans, are they offering the same amount of commercial, residential? How are they broken down?
Yeah, good question. We have not fully, we have done some legwork with that. Obviously, we're going to wait until you endorse them, but generally they all represent about the same, just a little more, just a little less in some instances. And they're all generally consistent with Measure D that the committee passed. Nothing is really exceeding that. The other thing I want to remind people is that this is a 25-year plan. It's not all happening tomorrow. 25 years is a long, long time. And in addition to generally showing land uses, there'll be a whole slew of policy instruments that's going to go in the general plan. So the general plan will have ideas about phasing, for example, that if we were to go with this idea, for example, you don't want to be developing something at this edge without maybe filling in the inner area first, for example. There'll be policies about open space conservation, dedications. And also, if we show something as residential, for example, here, it does not mean all of this will get developed. We may well have policies that say that any residential development should have, and I'm just making it 30% of land set as open space, and make sure that you're capturing, you're allowing for any view connections that might come from existing conditions, from existing streets. So those are all policy things we'll need to put in place. Ultimately, they may end up being more green on this map than you see over here. And we did capture them when you talk about, I described some of the hotels in here. Peter, one of these concepts has the office incubation space on the north side as well, right? That is you can describe that. Yeah. Sure. Okay.
Are there any more questions before we go into sort of looking at the draft guiding principles?
Well, how do we know that these maps aren't going to change, that in the third meeting there won't be any green at all?
There'll not be a what?
Any green at all.
Any green at all. Well, first of all, the idea is here simply to say these are okay enough to take out to the public. We are nothing is going to be decided today or tomorrow until
that's
we
my
get this
point.
workshop.
If nothing's decided today, we don't know if that green's going to be here for the next meeting. Will all these people think, oh, it's okay, the green's there, and then the green's not there?
I don't know how that would happen, but
Do we have a policy for acreage or parks for residents?
Yeah, we do currently have.
General plan, we have that.
We do have policies in the current general plan for that. It's a little messed up as we had discussed
I think it's
previously.
like 8 acres per 1,000 people.
Except that the subdivision regulations call for 3 acres per 1,000, so there was a disconnect between the two. So we're going to clean that up. And that 8 acres refers to, the 3 acres that's in the subdivision regulation refers to active neighborhood and community parks. We're not talking about, stuff like this that you'd walk along. So you need to keep that in mind. There's a lot more to open space, especially in Half Moon Bay, where you have a beautiful coastline. I mean, if you're jogging, you want to jog along
You
the
can
coastline.
set policy in place so you
Absolutely.
won't feel like you're not going to have any open green
Right.
space.
Or, development should be, I described that, everything is set back. We can have a policy that says everything should be set back, I don't know, 600 feet, 800 feet from the coastline. You don't need anything out there, you need to dedicate the rest. So we can work through and see what the implications are of that. Lina, do you want me to, or?
So we're still asking clarifying questions. Did you have one?
I did have a clarifying question and comment. If you could, I would appreciate it if you could maybe walk us through the existing general plan in relation to these 3 proposed themes.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you're going to talk about the guiding principles, but I want to step back for a second and mention 2 key things about the guiding principles from the documents you guys have prepared. One, open space and protecting it, enhancing it is the #1 priority from this community. And number 2 is maintaining the small town charm and feel. So I ask, as you go through these guiding principles, let's go back to the existing general plan, and any of these proposed changes and themes, let's evaluate it under a passing criteria. Does it pass at least 5 out of the 6 guiding principles? And if it doesn't, let's put it off. This is a lot of change. To the face of it, this is a very radical looking document, and it upsets a lot of people. That's why folks are here in orange. And
Oh, I didn't notice. Thanks for pointing that out. I thought it was a sign or something.
so it's something where it would be helpful to just kind of step back and let's evaluate some of the specific decisions decisions. And we don't want to disrupt the meeting. We want everybody to hear what you guys have to say, but I want to make sure that we think about that, especially with the guiding principles. I think this is a radical rewrite of what the city looks like from most people's perspective. And it's very concerning to see these types of changes, especially when we look at the existing general plan map and realize how much change we're talking about.
And that would be great. Is that something you can
Point of view.
address, the comparison while you're going through it?
Sure,
again?
absolutely.
That'd be great. And then also, so that will help with the radical change. And just a reminder, these are 3 proposals. What actually goes forward as a preferred plan is, I've never seen a public deliberation land on say, oh, we all choose that one. That never happens. They create a new option based on what they like out of different ones. That's what actually happens when the public gets involved. So we fully expect that to happen. This is just the range so that people can pick and choose amongst them. So Peter, are you going to walk us through?
I think, Bruce, were you going to?
Well, I just, I could say one of the characterizations from the existing general plan to what's being proposed is that we can say unequivocally across the board, it results in less growth than was originally planned for. So it's a soundbite that's meaningful to get across, is that we're talking about change to a lower scale than it's already approved in the existing plan. Every one of these options is considerably less.
So we didn't see numbers for that.
Well, I can tell you we were supposed to be at 15 or 20,000 by now. In this existing general plan, we're not. So we're below, I know we're coming in way below what the existing general plan called for build out of the community. So just as that's neither here nor there, but it's important to clarify as a distinguishing characteristic.
And the other point to remind people is that all of this gray land here is meant for planning and development, which is supposed to go through individual specific plans. So we don't have a full sense of what development will emerge from these PUD plans will look like ultimately.
So just one thing, all of these represent less than what's already approved in terms of a maximum.
So we're going to have Peter walk through it so he can do the request and compare, right? Compare the general plan to these existing ones.
And it is our hope that when we, certainly we will have that information. When you go to the public or public workshop, we'll have exact numbers corresponding to housing units, traffic, and so on at that time.
Was this a clarifying question?
I had a clarifying question.
Yes.
In regards to Rick's question too, that you had
But she
answered.
had
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
My question is whether these gray areas on the map reflect ownership by entities that have acquired the property for the expressive purpose of maintaining open space.
Peter.
Essentially, land is
There's 2 different sort of grays on the map. The gray over here on this existing general plan map, that is representing the planned unit development areas. And this
So
map,
do you know what planned unit development areas are?
housing.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, sort of, let me walk through one thing at a time. So first is gray. So in this case, gray means it's in a PUD district. And as it turns out, since the time of the last general plan, a lot of that land, as you say, has been bought by different land trusts and so on whose mission is to conserve open space. And so one of the things that we took into account, as we were developing these themes was, okay, what land is owned by the city or is owned by these open space trusts for the purpose of open space conservation, and setting that aside and assuming that it's going to end up in one of these open space categories. Yes.
That help?
It's a clarifying question. How does each of these alternatives or concepts relate to the current zoning, and how much zoning change would need to have taken effect once these are either merged into one concept or one particular concept is taken into perspective? So what is the next step? Let's just say something is merged. What are the next steps for zoning changes?
So typically the way sort of the planning process works is you do this whole public process and the visioning and so on and the analysis, and you decide what is the community's vision for the next 20 or 25 years. And that is represented by the plan. And then zoning is what follows the plan to implement it on a parcel by parcel basis.
Now, I would also add that Half Moon Bay is one of the only two cities that we know of in California that's entirely in the coastal zone. So as part of this process, one of the things we're also doing is preparing a local coastal program. And local coastal program also includes a zoning component. So anything we do here to change the existing zoning on the local coastal program has to not only go through the city council, but also to the Coastal Commission before it gets approved. And the Coastal Commission has its own criteria that might be a little different than what ours is. They're looking for more, opportunities to expand, connections to the coastline by visitors, for example, preservation of unique agricultural resources. Those are the criteria to look for. And look for changes.
So, follow-up clarification, so how much connection are we, in this time and place, coordinating with the Coastal Commission right now to even see if these things are even, these concepts are even feasible in their eyes from the Coastal Commission? Because there's Coastal Commission all across the state of California. So, just to understand their concept and their big plan as relates to how this concept integrates to their plan.
So that's something that we'll want to keep in mind, but I want to make sure that this
Just to
gentleman-
clarify the point earlier, I understand what you said about the existing plan versus the 3 thematic plans. But you made a lot of comments about the corridor, the open space corridor, that you dedicate some of that to development and dedicate the remainder next to the ocean as open space. So the question would be, what is the change in measurement, the width, the band between the ocean and the end of the current open space, and in that extremely long timeline that you're talking about, that 25-year long timeline, what will it shrink down to as we dedicate a portion of it to development to sustain that open space?
Let me try to clarify that a little bit.
Yes.
All of this land that is currently part of the state park system or city park land, there's no change.
And it's designated open space.
Well, there's a variety of other type of ownerships. Say parcels that the Chronicle gave away with subscription for 100 years that can be consolidated and either transformed into development or perhaps a state park. But we don't really know which way that would go right now. So if that's a variable, can we say, based on your plan, sir, which was quite eloquent, would it shrink from, a 300-yard to a 200-yard, or give us some scope so we can understand the
It's
measurement?
actually visually pretty apparent that you see that there is the gray area here, which is the area I pointed to.
Yes, I noticed down low. May I step up and point?
Sure, absolutely.
I noticed down here there was quite a difference. I don't have my measurement tools, but if I look here at this width, and when I move it over here, I'm sorry, it seems to be designated a whole other color and a different width. And it's
So that's the open space for
Yes.
conservation.
So this would be conserved forever?
Right.
The
So,
interior,
yes,
and the
right.
green part would be what?
The trails and so on. And that
So
will be
this is
conservation.
not even proposed for any development?
No, it's not.
And down here, this gray part here,
And we're actually creating more open space.
this will just be,
So that's existing development, housing development, that's the...
so you have no plans for this entire
No.
corridor in this green section?
No, we don't. And I can emphatically say that we have a lot more open space than in the current general plan, whether it's along the coastline or otherwise for park and recreation purposes.
So it will not shrink?
That will not shrink, and at the time of the public meeting in January and February, by that time, we'll quantify you, we'll tell you how many acres are there in the existing general plan compared with all these acres.
So
If you
Peter
want it
still
broken
needs-
down by coastline versus non-coastline, we can do that as well for you.
Good, good.
In the interest of having clarifying questions by the committee, otherwise.
Yeah, I just want to make sure also that the committee gets a chance because they're the ones that need to make their recommendations through the end of this. So, Peter, you want to walk them through and then the committee can.
Sure, and I want to be brief so that
Brief,
you can
yeah.
get into your discussion.
Thank you.
I just want to kind of go back through it in the light of the draft guiding principles, and that is, I think, the first question as Linda was introducing the exercise is, do these basically stack up? These themes, do they do a good job of trying to achieve these 6 guiding principles which were worked out, among us in the last couple of meetings, or a few meetings before that, I guess. So I'll sort of walk through each guiding principle briefly and just give a few ideas of how these themes are intended to help support that theme, and then I want the group to evaluate how well was that done and are there gaps and so on. So the first of the principles is, as someone said, maintain Half Moon Bay's small town character and quality of life, strengthen community connections through activities, and improve public gathering space. In this regard, the themes are intentionally limited in the sort of scale of development that we would anticipate. As Rajiv was saying, we wouldn't be talking about high density like you might think of in on the peninsula side, on the bay side, that you might be thinking of, clustered housing, co-housing, a little bit more multifamily housing, but nothing too intense. So that small town feel would stay. These concepts would bring additional parkland, public gathering spaces. Though the locations of these, we wanted to show some options. So you say, oh, this is how it would relate to this new neighborhood potentially, and this is how it would relate. This park would relate to, a downtown that has more activity, and so on and so forth. Moving on to the next one, enhancing the scenic visual quality and coastal landscape setting, and ensure protection of environmental and surrounding agricultural resources through conservation and sustainable development. In this case, we took seriously the analysis that was done in the existing conditions report, which is also available online for anyone who sort of missed that part of the planning process. We did a whole analysis of existing conditions, looked at potentially sensitive land, looked at public ownership, as I was responding earlier to another gentleman, and agricultural land that may be especially valuable, and wanted to try to make sure that a lot of that is conserved, even as the city of Half Moon Bay, over the next generation, does have a modest amount of growth. So that was an important consideration for all of these alternatives, and you see lots and lots of green, and green is the color of number 2. 3 is foster a complete and balanced community with enhanced local commercial options, business incubation and growth, and diverse residential opportunities. This is building on people's concerns, and we heard this a lot as well, about trying to balance to some extent the amount of housing that already exists here with jobs, because the idea is if you can have more people living here that can actually work here, there's less traffic, less commuting, and a better quality of life. So each of these, and also with housing, an aging population, a desire for more different types of housing, so that people can stay, better housing for entry-level housing and so on, for families and so on. So each of the concepts includes employment areas and areas where there could be a mix of medium and higher density housing as well. And these are in different locations in some cases in the different themes, but all of them include a fairly balanced amount of those land uses. Number 4 is promote pedestrian, bicycle, and transit mobility, increase connectivity between the city's neighborhoods, and enhanced coastal and open space access. So this one is really the one that focuses on movement, circulation, transportation, as well as getting to the coast. The biggest concern that we heard from the community when we were going through our initial community engagement process was traffic on Highway 1, traffic congestion. We heard a lot about that. We also heard a lot about frustration about not being able to get around, even for short trips, without getting on Highway 1, not being able to move from neighborhood to neighborhood, not being able to get to downtown or to high school without being in dangerous conditions if you're a child or a high school student, or someone without a car. So that was also something we wanted to try to treat and improve with these themes. So you see different concepts for roadway connections, in particular in this corridor and connections one. I think that theme goes the furthest in trying to sort of repair the problem of having these disconnected neighborhoods. But all of them would pay close attention to connecting new and existing neighborhoods to each other and to the downtown. Number 5, encourage downtown vitality with a more diverse array of uses and amenities. Well, all of them would maintain a sort of, the downtown would be sort of at the center of life in Half Moon Bay. The downtown focus one really takes that further by having a really compact pattern. Number 6, promote visitation and the city's development as a hub for the Mid-Coast. Gracefully accommodate tourism, balancing it with local needs and the community's character. Half Moon Bay, part of what it has to offer is something special for visitors, and someone was asking about the Coastal Act and wanted to make sure that whether our plan will pass muster with the Coastal Commission, which ultimately is an important consideration. And one of the things that the Coastal Commission values highly is access to the coast for visitors. That includes both public land and trails and all that kind of thing, and also visitor accommodations. So all of our sites include sites for potential hotels, bed and breakfast, boutique, visitor serving amenities, and we trying to link those to what is Half Moon Bay's greatest asset, which is, for visitors at least, which is the scenic coastline. So that's in a nutshell sort of how these themes are trying to build on the draft guiding principles. Yes.
Clarifying question.
Clarifying question.
Clarifying question. My clarifying question is about the spine, and that is about Highway 1 and getting to capacity on Highway 1. Because once you start connecting neighborhoods, I'm from the Highland Park neighborhood, as are my friends back here. Our major concern is that unless Highway 1 is at capacity and is fully functional, whether it be 4 lanes and all the way through Half Moon Bay proper, that connections through neighborhoods are going to end up being commuter escapes, just as we had in Highland Park when CUSD stopped busing. We were discovered as an access to the high school, and God bless Elanto Property. Finally, after 10 years, they shut down that path because, as their tenant, a rancher describes it, it was chaos in our neighborhood. So my major concern is sequencing, capacity of Highway 1, how this is going to proceed.
So the clarifying question is about something about the spine, right?
The spine and the connecting roads in throughout neighborhoods.
Yes, so can we just get a little clarification of where connecting roads are in the existing themes as one of the options that people
And
will
sequencing.
Right, so I just want to clarify one thing. The city actually went through a circulation element update not that long ago, it's just 9 or 10 months ago. And at that time, that circulation element has ideas about connectivity. They mentioned specific things, including the notion of a Portable Boulevard, specific things to happen along Highway 1, on the west side, and so on. We've tried to stray.
We're east side.
Both sides.
We're the orphan neighborhoods on
I know
the east
you
side.
are the east side. So we try to be responsive to that as well, because that went through a public process. And in some instances, we may not even actually go as far as the document suggests. So I would say that you have a good policy, input idea, and we want to come to that at a later stage. I mean, I think the question we're asking this committee right now is did we capture the guiding principles in these documents? Is there a fatal flaw in these, that too much connectivity somewhere that we ought to take off from the maps here?
Or too soon.
Or is there something missing from here that you do not see that you would like public input on?
Yeah.
And the process is, the public is going to tell us. That lady in the orange shirt and her neighbors are going to tell us at the public meeting that connectivity is not going to work. So we'll hear that, undoubtedly. So that's, we're not necessarily afraid of that, because the idea is to get your input, and we will get that. And if people don't want something, it'll go off the map automatically. But if there is a fatal flaw you all feel like we can be presenting to the public, we need to capture that now. And then similarly, if something is missing, we want to put it on the map.
And I also just want to encourage those.
I'm going to turn it over to Linda to facilitate you.
So I also want to encourage those folks that are in the public, and also the GPAC who have had attending to this process. There are a lot of documents already developed that I really encourage you, like the circulation plan, that are all posted, that would be really good to take a look at. So you have a better sense of sort of what the basis is that they're working on. And I'm gonna take one more comment from the public, and then it's the GPAC's meeting. We gotta give it to they haven't hardly said a word for me.
On all 3 proposals, it's never mentioned to increase Highway 1 to 4 levels. What you have is a city that's 50 years old, and you're trying to connect neighborhoods with roads that, under the guise of trying to connect neighborhoods, you're trying to create an alternative to Highway 1.
Okay, that's great, because that is input that the GPAC can discuss as a possible thing that's missing. So, after the GPAC has a discussion, then we'll come back to public comment, okay? As it's in the agenda. So, GPAC, there are 2 questions for you to please consider. Do they, in fact, Peter walked you through the principles. Do you buy it? Do they, no offense, Peter. Are they in fact consistent with the principles, and then what do you see? And then I'm going to ask Bruce to capture things so that we can make sure that goes in. Yeah.
Great.
Thanks.
So, I guess an initial positive comment, I want to
Thank you.
appreciate that the current plans do change a lot of the existing general plan designations to a lower amount of development and more open space. As I have a little bit of a concern about building the current general plan off of that past general plan, though, just because of the acknowledgement that that general plan doesn't necessarily reflect current reality. And so what I don't necessarily see in the current themes is really an open space first or conservation first theme. Each plan includes a number of different developments that I think, from what I've heard from different people, are just little aspects that are somewhat poison pills and don't necessarily, there's not a lot of rhyme or reasons why some development's placed here and some development's placed elsewhere. So the existing general plan, I understand that it proposes a certain level of build out, and the current alternatives try to match or get close to that build out. And I just have to question whether that build out is really reasonable, if it's feasible, and if it's something that is even something that we should be striving for in terms of if we are trying to strive for smart planning, and not necessarily just trying to perpetuate past mistakes. So that's one comment, and I guess
Can I make sure we got that? So it's like, what's missing is an open space first option.
Exactly. It's missing an open space first option, and our baseline, I think, is falsely inflated.
Okay.
Just one specific mention to the Railroad Avenue Boulevard. I think that causes a lot of people's concern. The way it's described in the themes, it was changed in the discussion today that it wouldn't necessarily be a roadway, but it's still proposed as a potential trail. I would somewhat, if it were just a trail, that might be palatable, but there's some question there about, we have the coastal trail. We have a lot of other existing resources that I think a lot of people question if they're maintained properly. And I think if we look at our the bridge that's fallen down now, and if we really should be investing in new trails when we should be investing what we already have.
So would you say it shouldn't even go to the public? Is that what you're saying, that option should not go to the public?
As it's presented now, I don't think it should go to the public. It creates a new corridor through a neighborhood that doesn't necessarily have a corridor now. I think it's just, as it's presented now, as a roadway, as a boulevard / potential trail, I don't think it should go forward.
Which one is it?
Yeah, it's showcasing the coast.
So also, thank you. And maybe there's another, I want to make sure that everybody has a chance to comment. And also just keeping in mind that what we're asking is that the public have a chance to weigh in on an idea.
Correct.
So if you take an idea off the table now, you're taking away the option for the public to weigh in on it.
Okay, I'll try not to do that.
Okay.
Just one other point, I guess, in the nuance.
That's okay.
I understand there's a lot of nuance built into the language there, and when we're talking about enhancing coastal access, I think some people might see that as enhancing pedestrian access and enhancing bicycle access. Other people might see that as enhancing automobile access. And I think that's a clarifying question that needs to be built in there, because it really kind of changes the nature of some of that enhanced coastal access.
So clarify which access we're talking about.
What is the nature of the enhanced coastal access?
Okay,
And with that,
thanks, Brian. Yeah.
Question. I know in previous meetings we had talked about the infrastructure needed for parking. If you're going to have visitors come in, if you're going to have people in the downtown area in a more intense way, we needed some infrastructure to allow for parking so people could then leave the car and then potentially go by bike or other ways to the rest of the area. I don't see any particular zoning for parking. Where specifically are you allocating space for that? Thank you.
I know that question came up at the last meeting. Parking is one of those things it's a very detailed subject. It requires a lot of calculations. It requires us to know specifically what's going to happen in downtown versus somewhere else if you're expecting to meet the demand. So we don't typically in general plans show, unless you're doing a plan for just the downtown, where you would show parking lots at this bigger picture scale. We do not show sites for parking, which is not to say that at a policy level, we cannot address that when the time comes.
So how do we ensure the plan allocates space for parking such that it is in the right space and in the right adjacency?
So the plan actually, the general plan will consist of not just these maps here, but all of the 7 elements specified by state law, including a transportation element. The transportation or circulation element is the correct word for it. The circulation element will go through in a lot of detail about specificities of different concepts. That gentleman asked about, is it going to be a 4-lane road or not? It's going to specify whether it will be or not. It will talk about if parking is an issue. It's going to talk about setting up a program for downtown parking. And before we set aside land for parking spaces, they're going to go through, evaluate. Typically, they'll count the cars. They'll say where the people coming from. They'll get license plates. They will say what are the programmatic actions we can take to actually make more availability of that parking happen first before we can put the garage, because people, in a small town, the garage may be too much of a thing for people to handle. So they will go through programmatically, then they look at new sites, and I mean, it's a whole program in of itself. So we can direct that the city start the process of preparing a downtown parking program. And then a separate study will be undertaken where they'll go through all of those details.
And that's part of the general plan?
The general plan will say that.
Okay.
And we are just looking at these maps here. We'll be later on writing the elements. And it's going to go through this committee, the policy language for the elements.
And related to that, I see the red zones, which were, a couple of the different plans are related to some micro commercial areas within a residential. I think it's an interesting concept because people don't have to travel potentially. Some of the issues, though, is that I know that the city code contains some potential to allow businesses to build and have commercial facilities without enough parking. And we do need to think about that and address that within the city's code before you allow that kind of commercial activity to be in a neighborhood.
Absolutely.
I'm in a neighborhood right now where we've had some commercial activity, and instead of the parking being at the facility, it's in the neighborhood, blocking people's driveway and causing issues.
So that good point. There are a lot of things in here that people may find conditionally acceptable. In other words, that housing may be okay as long as you can make sure it's set back 1,000 feet from the coast, or that commercial may be okay as long as you make sure you've got enough parking and so on. We want to capture all that, and there will be a time for that more detailed discussion later on before we set that.
So maybe what we could capture in that is that in part of the public discussion, that we encourage people to say, we like this if, we don't like that unless, so that people actually weigh in, have an opportunity to weigh in on some of those details when they're discussing these various items. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
So let's put public input on, this would be called policy stuff?
I mean, I don't think this requires public input right now.
No, but it's
later date.
It's a forward, yes. Yeah, it's for when they start looking at
And the elements themselves, yeah.
Yeah, it's the elements. Does that sound right? Who was first? You're going to have to tell me because I
Sherzad.
Thank you.
So I chair Parks and Rec for the city of Half Moon Bay and have been for the last 4 years. I have the Park and Recreation element general plan that is in current existence. And what I don't see on our existing plan is that there was by Foothill Trail, which it's in the plan right now for the Foothill Trail.
Yeah.
There's about 1, 2, 3 proposed, or actually 4 proposed parks up there.
In the existing general plan?
In the existing general plan that I don't see there. And one of the guiding principles that we really came up with originally in this group, we all agreed on this central park. I think a community gathering place, and we really talked about the need for us to have a central park and then have access for, I know it's hard, nobody really wants more traffic in their neighborhoods with their kids, but we also don't want kids on Highway 1 walking, and that was one of the original talks. And this Foothill Trail is to really, how do we get the kids to high school, how do we get the kids safely to school and home?
Where is Foothill?
So, I know that, and this is in the general plan as it exists right now, but I don't see a central park in any of these.
Any of the 3 themes?
That was something I believe we all agreed on.
Okay, great. So we need to add that to at least one of them so that the public can consider that.
And how do we get the kids there? How do we get our community there? How do we get people out of their cars walking? But we need to, and as far as how we really take care of our trails, I can tell you we've done the Adopt a Park program, we've done many things, in the last 4 years, we've really invested time and effort into trying to improve our current trails. And I don't think that in this plan, we really are, I think the development is less, and I think parks is less.
So,
I mean, I see an 8 acre per thousand, I don't see the 3.5 that you're mentioning here. So, but just to look at that and have some guidelines, so people can feel free that, okay, these are our guidelines, we're not, we're gonna, per population, have parks.
is that anything to do with the, an assumption about open space and something different is a park?
Well, I think that we can talk about that. That
Right,
was
so,
something
so we will,
talked
in
about.
response, correct the existing general plan map to correctly show what you mentioned. We will certainly quantify parks per thousand
Especially the
residents.
foothill trail that's
Right.
already in there.
We will certainly, quantify the parks per thousand residents and open space per thousand residents for each of the three options and the current general plan. And I think if, I agree, we talked about the Central Park and it's not really showing up on these maps. If there is, in addition to telling us to put it on a map, if there are ideas about where it should be, then
Well,
we have to.
I think we've identified a few on here 20
Okay.
years ago.
Okay, so we want to look at that. yeah.
Take a look at that.
Okay.
And let the public decide on where they feel it's best and where they're going to support it, where we're going to support it.
Perfect. Thank you. That's exactly the kind of find we were looking for. Thanks.
So I realized that these would go through, there would be a more analysis of them in terms of how alternatives would perform, but I have to agree with something that I think I heard Brian saying, which is basically that we're working from a baseline that doesn't accurately represent reality. I mean, we talked about the top concern of the community being circulation, traffic, and I just see that we're saying, well, this was our baseline in terms of what our growth is, and we have to move forward with that. And we looked at that separately. That was done in a separate trends and forecasting analysis without considering, well, how does that match up with our already existing problems with traffic and stormwater drainage and things like that we already have. And I think it's a bit disingenuous to then go out to the public and present that there's all these options without having considered that. And I would also point out that while we're going to be doing the local coastal program, I guess that comes on later in the timeline. I don't think that we can ignore it now in terms of what they're going to apply the coastal commission is going to apply their policy whether or not we've done it. And so I think there's certain things that they're going to ask us to be aware of. And it's, for instance, we have the wastewater treatment plant, which actually isn't even shown on all of the three alternatives, which already has, significant problems with, during big rainy events. There's issues with manhole covers overflowing, things like that. That if you look at existing flood zones and projected within the next 25 years, the time frame of this plan, that area is projected to experience wave action, like all the way up to basically the wastewater treatment plant. We can't. We have to consider those things especially honestly, the biggest. I really don't feel like we see an open space alternative that puts it first. That is very true. But even just there's a side of me, it's like, we just can't accommodate this much traffic. We already have, so I think it's just, we have to consider a different baseline. We can't just do the business as usual and expect that we're going to be able to move forward and have a sustainable type of development. That's one of our key principles, and maintaining our kind of small town character and quality of life. These are all things that we're just going to destroy it if we think that we're going to continue at the previous rate and that our shorelines, for instance, going to look the same. We won't have more problems with drainage in our neighborhoods, which nobody really wants. So if we just put in more, we actually create, like Brian pointed out, more maintenance issues that we have to deal with, and we already struggle.
So essentially,
Deal
you're
with it.
talking now about the same option that Brian brought up, that is a more open space forward.
Well, yeah, and that comes out of reality, which is that we just don't have capacity to accommodate, whether or not this is in reality a lower amount of build out than in the existing plan. It doesn't matter. We can't accommodate what's being proposed in any of these scenarios. So
Okay, so a
I think
scenario
we-
with less development.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, reality is we just don't have the capacity for that.
I'd really like to make sure that we hear from the whole GPAC, because this side of the table's been talking a lot. How about the rest of y'all? Yeah, please.
I noticed on corridors and connections, no Foothill Boulevard being shown.
So Foothill Boulevard option is not on any of these.
Well, on the corridors and connections, where we would expect to see it.
Okay. So you think it's important that the Foothill Boulevard option is on there?
Well, it's been discussed for years and years, and
Yes. Yeah.
very-
Yes. Up for discussion.
Yeah.
So I think there are two items definitely that we thought that the group needs to discuss.
Yeah.
One is what Brian said, that he definitely doesn't want to see Railroad Avenue become a road.
Yeah.
And the other one is what Ed is saying for the boulevard being actually shown on the map. So those are two items I think we need the group's input.
Well, what we need is there a recommendation? Could the GPAC live with having an option?
So I think we should maybe try to run through and see if there are 3 or 4 other points, and then we can have a discussion at the end about
Can I
those.
just ask a quick clarifying question?
Yeah.
I've heard from a number of people, and I'm not presenting this in any way with bias one way or the other, that Foothill Boulevard is just not a possibility because of previously approved development.
Because what?
Because of previously approved development, the Civic Ridge development.
Okay. We can find out.
So,
Yeah, we should
I don't
definitely
know,
find that
I don't know
out.
if Bruce or Dante, if you guys have any comments on that, just, is it even a feasible thing to discuss?
If the GPAC wants us to study that, we will.
Yeah.
We're still in the, we're not to public comment
About
yet.
this issue.
So you mean you have an answer to that question? Because we want to do.
I understand that. I was attending the transportation meeting, it was a few nights ago up in El Granada. Same thing came up. The people at that meeting, facilitating that meeting from the county planners, said, forget about Foothill Boulevard, it's not going to happen, it's not possible.
Well, that's
They say why?
Half Moon Bay, it doesn't particularly.
Yeah.
But it does affect the county because the circulation element needs to take into consideration the sphere of influence from everywhere else.
So we are going to show on these maps what people at Half Moon Bay want and and not what El Granada wants or what the county planner wants and doesn't want. I mean, this is the city's plan, first and foremost. So we'll listen to people here, listen to the planning commission, city council, and GBAC about that. If the GBAC wants us to study the Foothill Boulevard option, and that is it, we'll study it. You don't want us to study it, we don't study it.
Study
It
it.
doesn't, you know, that's-
Yeah, so let's go back to Ed's comment, and again,
No, we are. Yeah.
yes,
Well, one of the things we discussed was alternative to Highway 1, alternative to Highway 1.
yeah, that one already brought up, so
Yeah,
that's
so
also not.
there's an alternative to Highway 1, there may be other ones also.
Oh, I see, an alternative, but none of the
Now,
plans.
I brought this up, I think, before. I've been told that the 76 Coastal Act will not allow Highway 1 to be more than 2 lanes in most areas. Does anybody know that I've never read the 76 Coastal Act. Is that?
I've heard that too.
Is that true? Does
Well, it's
anybody
a
know?
little, we read it and it says along the rural stretches and we're not exactly sure at Half Moon how they perceive that,
Right.
rural or not rural.
I mean, obviously, it's 3 and 4 lanes in some places right now. I just wondered,
I mean, so obviously, that's an item that GPAC should give us direction on. I mean, I think through the circulation element process, the circulation element currently does not recommend going beyond the 1 lane in the direction. So that definitely is the status quo on that, unless GPAC also wants to give us direction to expand Highway 1, which is not
Or to
really been
study it,
discussed.
to study it, right?
Right, so those are 2 different things.
Right.
Foothill Boulevard and Highway 1 expansion, those are 2 different things, yeah.
Clarifying question.
Yeah.
It seems like if you're
giving direction to this GPAC committee to study anything they want, whatever they direct you guys to study, you could study. It seems like could be a waste of time and money if you don't clarify with the permitting agencies whether or not those things are even an option. So it seems like it would make more sense to check in with the permitting agencies first before you waste time and waste the public's time on things that just can't happen.
Yeah,
Right, so
that's part of the study.
Yeah, so we are actually, that'll be part of the study, because before the permitting agency decides anything, they'll want to know, does it make a difference, for example, in traffic? And we cannot understand that or have a response unless we put it on a map, and our traffic consultant is going to run the cancellation number on each one of these, and we will know. If so part of that is having all of those pieces in place before we can even go and speak to somebody. And I think we need to keep in mind what the public sentiment is, on those issues as well. If people want us to at least study it for the purpose of understanding what the consequences of that be, which is not to say that people will ultimately say put it in, but just for that purpose, we're happy to do that. But if you think it's off the table, it's off the table. I mean, that's really
So I also want to hear more from the GPAC.
I'd also like to add before we move on, the concept of this community deciding what the community feels is best in our interest versus what the state wants. So there, a lot of the times when we do check out and consult with our other agencies, they'll say, well, we want your process to come to rest before you come to us. So you've sorted all those things out locally and made the decision when you come to us. So the concept is to identify what the community deems a priority and then make the case and how we interpret that to be compliant.
Okay, so we're going to come back here because somebody has...
This is about that. I beg to differ. I happen to know that they expect that we are considering this in tandem with the Coastal Commission is expecting that we are considering this in tandem. They consider this particularly because we are pretty much completely within the coastal zone. Yeah. It's not a separate, they don't view it as a separate. I talked to the staff and asked them about it but I hear what you're saying, but I'm saying that they expect that we are doing this in parallel and that together we're considering our local coastal program changes and what that means for our general plan together.
We are. That is in the work program, but we're just doing the general plan first. The LCP is right behind it. And let me remind you, this general plan is consistent with the local coastal program. Now,
existing one, yes.
So we're going through the same exercise again. It's just getting more to the point where we kind of need to decide what the community feels is in the community's interest.
Can I add just a small thing? We are certainly considering, as we're drawing up these themes, what we understand the Coastal Act to be about. But the Coastal Act is kind of broad, and the coastal commissioners and what they are going to decide ultimately is going to be shaded by the whole plan, the plan as a whole.
But just, you can see what's consistent already. So what was consistent in 1993, and we're making the case that these days, the information that we have is far more consistent with the Coastal Act than we were in 1993, especially as it evolved.
So another comment on what should be added, what's missing, and any concern about it in the guiding principle. Was it you, Christian?
One thing I think that would be helpful for everybody here, and it's probably forthcoming, is in each one of the plans up here, there's going to be a certain amount of different uses.
Yeah.
And if we can take the existing amount of use by acreage, and then those three break them down by acreage, meaning there's going to be so much residential, if it's low density, medium density, and how much that's going to create in potential housing if it was to develop that way. Then we could sit there and compare all four choices and get a better consensus.
And we will do that.
Yeah, so just let's capture it to make sure, so that there's figures about not what's existing in the plan, but rather what's really existing on the ground.
No. He's saying quantify. Tell me how many housing units there, how many acres of residential land.
If you've got 50 acres being designated low-density residential, and you can build a single-family home that brings out 2.8 people per house. Then we get a picture of what this is really going to bring over the next 25 years.
Okay, so for each of the themes.
For each theme, including, I guess, even if you can bring something into the original general plan.
So we're going to do that. We're going to do that before it goes out of the public. We're going to do that before it goes out of the public.
Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other,
So
I would really think it would help if, and I think we talked about this, but if you designate some potential central parks that people could look at
Yeah.
and say, this would be my #1 choice for a central park. Yeah, another thing is, you mentioned the parking, we need to have on there potential places for parking, because that will affect what the zoning is. If we want something for parking, I don't think we should zone it residential or open space or whatever it is, because once you lose that opportunity, it's gone forever. It's the same way with Central Park. Once we lose that opportunity to make it a Central Park, once there's any kind of development or zoning this kind of development, that opportunity is gone. But I think it's very important that we do that on the front end and let everybody look at it and figure out what they want. But it, it has to be a big parcel. There are not very many big parcels to do that with.
It's it's sort of a chicken and egg kind of a syndrome, because if we have a transportation plan looking at the need for an additional parking garage and want to know how much new development is anticipated to happen, and I just doubt that it happens when you have more than one parking garage and then there's a parking garage somewhere. So we're talking about a site, we're not talking about 3 or 4 sites.
Well, even one site.
Yeah, right. So that would be something that truly belongs, we would say that we want to study a parking garage as part of the process.
I'm not saying a garage or just a space that.
So that would be, programmatic activity. I can guarantee you that once the plan is done, there'll be a whole multitude of follow-up studies that will need to be done, ranging from. We generally like this idea of the open space there. We don't exactly are sure how big we should not be to meet the needs. There'll be a park and recreation assessment need that'll, study that'll need to be done for that. How big of what parking programs to put in place, we need to study that. What specifically should be the parking standards, even in areas, that's something to be studied as well. There'll be a whole lot of stuff to be studied. And we want to set the bigger picture correct and make sure we capture all of those points in the policies we write, so they are not lost.
I would say nothing here is, as she said, has some parking. Nothing has parking on it. So
We agree with that, and we're going to work on that.
That's something that needs to be on here, so we can move forward, so people can address that in the public comments, that they.
Right.
And another thing is, I just don't see anything on any of these plans that's going to help traffic at all. There's nothing here that's going to make our traffic.
And what would you think would help traffic?
Well, I mean, Foothill Boulevard, if people are saying it's not an option, it's not an option, that's fine. But there's nothing here that will help traffic.
I think we should have once you go through, have a discussion about Foothill and Railroad.
Yeah, at the end we'll have.
discussed Foothill Boulevard from day one.
Yeah.
The first meeting, we
First
talked
meeting.
about it, and so I would think there would be an option for us to really put out to the public, because we've discussed it. from
Going
day
round
one.
and round. So
Well,
let
you
me
should
just do a
ask for a show
check
of
of that
hands.
right now. So what we need is, we don't need you to be enthusiastic about all 3 of these. What we need is some decisions. We don't need you to even be enthusiastic about one. What we need is guidance to move things forward, what needs to be added to go to the public. So essentially what it comes down to is, can you live with the option of Foothill? Can everybody live with the option of Foothill going to the public? Is there anyone who really could? We're asking the committee. So, and this is, again, you're the public, so you get to weigh in. When you look at Foothill, you can say no, but right now, we're just, do you even get to look at it?
Point of
Yeah.
clarification.
Yeah.
I think everybody on the table
Yeah.
would say Foothill needs a picture.
A picture of what that would
look
Yeah.
So that any future, that would be a picture.
Yeah. So we needed them. So that's done.
It's currently in the plan, as a trail, but I mean, yeah.
Are you talking about the existing?
Here,
Yeah.
that's what I want to understand.
Right.
But that is.
That's the parking direction, the circulation element of 917.
Okay.
I guess I just, it seems like by this time we should know whether it's even a possibility or not, and before, So why would you present something to the public if it turns out it's not even a possibility because of the land ownership or whatever? I don't know. I don't know anything about it. I just don't feel like it's a good idea to present something to the public that is actually not even remotely possible because or at all. So that's why I can't
So
answer
how
that
about if we
question.
did
Like,
an
why
if?
analyze something or include something that isn't possible? I don't know.
So how about if we did an if? So if this group can say it should be included if, in fact, they find out that it is not like illegal or something.
If you have an answer, or clarify or hear.
Oh, there's the gentleman who has the answer?
Yes.
Well, I don't know if
Part
that's
of
the
it.
answer, but
Oh.
I don't know whether, I wanted to have an opportunity to speak on behalf of Ilanto Properties for just a minute.
Okay, so
Now that you're on
can we just
Foothill?
wait until we're finished with this process
No, that's
here?
why I
And then
want
we're
to
gonna go to the
respect,
public
I want
comment.
to respect your
You'll be
process.
first.
I don't want to interrupt, but
Okay.
It's Foothill.
but I'll be happy to wait till you're complete here, and then I'd like just to make sure I have the
Okay.
opportunity.
Great, thank you. So you'll be the first person
Thank
on
you.
comment. Thank you.
So I have a concern about you asking us a question when the person who just wanted to speak has the answer.
Does he have the answer?
That's right.
Oh, he said he didn't have the answer.
Well, he's done.
He's modest, he's being modest.
Potentially has the answer that would potentially save us some time.
Yeah, well then,
And I would appreciate it.
okay, absolutely, that's great. I heard him say no. I believed you.
Well, I'll give you an answer, but from our standpoint, but whether it answers the big question we have here, I don't know.
Okay, you want to give the answer then?
Oh, you-
Because the committee is still waiting.
Okay, all right, I just wanted to respect the
Sure,
process.
thank you, I really appreciate that.
Okay, my name is John Ward, and I represent Ilanto Properties, the owner of Pacific Ridge.
Yeah.
They bought this property in 1985, so if you look at the math on that, it's about 30
Can
years.
somebody point to the map and say what
Yeah,
the
because
right
Tell us where.
And I provided your planner
Great.
with copies of, there's 2 exhibits which should be distributed. One of which is your corridors and connections plan.
Yeah,
And on that, we simply put the outline, delineated the property lines for Pacific Ridge. So there's 15 copies that I provided available. In addition, the subdivision map, the approved subdivision map for Pacific Ridge.
great.
So we're a little late getting in, but not that late, not too late.
No, not too late.
When I was given a copy of the corridors and connections plan, I had to look at it twice because I didn't realize that Foothill was going to be shown, and it runs right through the heart of the approved subdivision, approved by the Coastal Commission with a modified coastal development permit in 2008, which was a culmination of a 1-year mediation process, a 3-party lawsuit involving Ilanto, the city, and the Coastal Commission. A 1-year process that completed in 2004. I've been involved since 2005. So a lot of history here, and there's 114 acres, 3/4 of which is going to be in permanent open space with 63 lots. So there really isn't anything to study from our standpoint as Foothill might affect the property. Okay, now whatever you decide to do in terms of from 92 up to that point, it's another matter. We did, because we were challenged, a couple of people in the room can speak to that because they engaged us. We did study the feasibility of the Foothill Boulevard alignment, both with respect to financial feasibility of constructing it, and secondly, the environmental impacts that might come out of that. And the determination was it was infeasible, on both grounds. So I would simply say to you that we want to be sure we're on the record early. Whatever the committee decides is certainly not in our control. But I just wanted you to know that when you look at the exhibit, you can understand why I'm here as it relates to that map.
So, can I interpret, because I don't understand a lot about this, so maybe if I say it, there's other people that don't understand it quite either. So what you're saying is based on already decisions, court decisions, and the commission.
Final subdivision map.
So, final subdivision map, it is not feasible to run Foothill through
Not an
this.
option, and the access will be from Terrace or into the vicinity with a signal.
Okay.
Traffic signal Highway 1. That's part of the responsibility of the developer and it's the city's project, but.
Barring eminent domain for public good, of course. Right, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
So I hope that's clear.
Barring eminent domain.
And approval by the coastal commission.
Well, it's been approved
Sorry.
by the coastal commission.
Well, you know, the thing we do not know is that if there are any enactment options that do not, for example, go to the Pacific Ridge property. Right. I don't have an answer to it, you know,
Well, we
because
can
we
look
haven't
at
looked
that,
at it.
right?
Yeah.
So an option to the foothill as drawn, but not through Pacific Ridge property would be something that we could, does that sound right?
Yeah.
And there was,
But it wouldn't be within the city limits.
would it be within the city limits? We have to, that's what we have to look at and see if that's even possible.
It's not.
It's
I
not.
mean,
He knows.
the edge of Pacific Ridge subdivision is
Is the city limit.
Right.
But is there something in a place inside of it?
I mean, a lot of houses.
The high school.
A lot of houses in the high
Went to
school.
the high school.
Because I don't have an answer to that.
And you
Thank
definitely.
you. Thank you very much for coming forward. And thank you for that. The city limits question too. So we need to go back and look at it, but it doesn't look like, it looks like a non-starter.
That's why I'm talking Highway 1.
But, yeah, so Dan had something. Then we're gonna go to public comments.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on a few things. Number one, I do think that it would be helpful to, again, we're seeing all these comments about the open space, and how one of the options, not all three, but one of the options presented to the public should definitely really push even more open space, since it's clearly, a desire on some of the public's part. And then, that, something I want to echo about what Brian said about the Railroad Avenue plan on the Showcase on the Coast. I think it matters how it's presented to the public. If it's presented as a bike path or a pedestrian path or a road, but I don't think it can really be presented as it might be one or the other, because that has very different meanings depending on how it's presented.
Yeah, and I think that that's what Brian was talking about too. So it needs to be either clarified, or how about if it went, here are two options and the public can weigh in. Would you like to see it be a road, or would you like to see it be a trail? Would that be, is that acceptable? you
I mean,
think?
my own personal opinion is I don't think it's a good plan to have it as a road. If it was presented as a possible trail, that's my personal opinion. That would be reasonable. And then one of
Is someone in this group that says it really needs to be on an option to have it as a road?
I actually have some information about
Oh,
the
great,
railroad
thank you,
right
Joe.
away. My organization holds a conservation easement, and there is no ability for that to have a roadway.
Well,
There
that
is-
solves
There
it.
is a potential for a trail, but the community has told us they do not want that. Adjacent property owners do not want a trail.
Okay, so thank you very
But
much.
that's only from Kelly to Seymour. The extension that you have from Kelly north goes across other people's properties. That's not public land either, that's private property, but that trail would go on.
We need
That you have from Kelly north.
And then that was my next thing, is at the west end of Kelly, right down by Francis Beach, all three of the maps have some type of commercial development there.
Yeah.
And I don't know how that fits with, I don't know, on the existing plan, the brown is urban reserve, and I don't know what that means.
Oh, okay. I'm in the whole wrong area.
Urban reserve is kind of a holding zone, and in theory, it's to be developed last after all the other undeveloped parts.
Well, I mean, that's just what it seems to me, is why have it be on all three options is listed as, some type of commercial development on all three options. And it just seems like, at least on one, we should have it as not being commercial development.
Okay. So can we capture that?
Sure.
That, some option in which.
The west end of Kelly.
Yeah, Kelly is.
All three have it as, they're all pink or purple.
This one here.
Yeah, it's the same in all of them, and he wants.
I mean, they're slightly different, but all three show some type of commercial development, and I think at least one of them should show not being
Not
commercial development.
Thanks.
And then my last thing is, I'm just curious about the process, like the Podesta neighborhood just west of the high school, and then the area south of Miramontes Road, the very south of town. I'm just curious as to what was the thought process behind shading those differently on the three different maps? Like why in the Showcase on the Coast that shows parking in the Podesta area, and then on the other two it doesn't? So I just don't understand how that was determined.
Maybe Peter can speak to that.
Podesta property is this I believe.
Yeah.
So, in the downtown focus plan, we're showing it as an employment site. That's that, that's that pink color, office.
Okay.
In the corridors and connection site, we're showing a mix of office, closest to Highway 1, medium or high density housing in the rear part of the parcel, closer to the high school, and the neighborhood park.
Because that's consistent with closer density in downtown.
This is the corridors and connections.
Oh, okay.
I would say the downtown focus, the idea is to get a bunch of jobs closer to downtown, support downtown vitality during the daytime. Option 2, you have a smaller employment area, you have more multifamily housing there because you're not getting it more around here that you are in the downtown focus plan. In the third option, we're showing a commercial site with potentially like a public park and ride and a single family housing subdivision in the back.
You see, how does this work with the traffic getting up to high school as it is? I mean, it's already a mess. I mean, I don't know, but it's a mess every day.
So all three of them don't help with that, is that what you're saying?
Well, it's kind of what you were saying earlier about the traffic in general. I mean,
None of them help.
Well, I think you also have to assume that each of them comes with its own circulation, improvements, right?
well, what would those improvements be?
Yeah, could you explain the difference in the improvement to Highway 1?
Well, you can see on some of these, right? Additional, and this is sort of the first, conceptual view of, something, right? So a connection, an interior connection within that site. We are showing, it's in the office one as well. We're showing connections across sites that.
But they're all
I agree with you.
They're all dumping out right where the busiest part is. You're not doing anything. You're just taking them around the busy part again.
So Halfmoon Bay has a lot of traffic problems on Highway 1, and new development should contribute to that.
Yeah.
Speaking of traffic issues, I think, looking at any of these, particularly like there isn't a blow up of the really much further south, but there's a big area that's been changed in all three. It's a little slightly different.
I think this is this area?
No, it's on the west side of Highway 1, just a little bit north, just at the south end of the wave crest.
This area.
Yeah. Talk about a bad idea, sending a huge amount of traffic out onto Redondo Road right there every morning. I mean, it's hundreds of cars. It's a nightmare. They're all going to have to be yet another light. So, no, further south. That's big.
North of Redondo.
Greenhouse.
Just
One of the greenhouses. Rocket farms.
So that shade indicates very low density residential and should be understood to be, let's say, you would be housing it, I think what Chief said, maybe a house on an acre lot, or you'd have cluster development with a lot with, let's say, 80 or 75% of the site considered as open space. So I think, yes, and those
But
people would have cars.
that's actually not when you do low density residential, even though it's not actually anything that's you aren't actually helping open space. Like it's just because there's fewer houses on it, that's still it's actually not actually viable habitat or open space, and it's actually there's not going to be any access on it. So not only is it's in a sensitive habitat area, I can tell you that.
I think one of the things that we need to also think about in this process is.
Let me finish. It's in a sensitive habitat area, and just because it's low density housing doesn't mean that that's going to be any better for the habitat that's out there. And it's still a lot of housing that you're talking about putting in and sending more traffic right out onto Highway 1. So those are my points. I think it's a bad idea. I don't think it should be on there.
So you don't think the public should consider?
So I just want to point out that the existing PUD allows for a whole lot of housing in the area, and this is 10 times less intense than that, or something like that. And that's a discussion that we should have. That's just totally taken off the table, and then how do we actually, at the end of the day, achieve that open space?
Well, the housing, the way it's zoned now, requires it to be a comprehensive plan.
Right.
That is different. That is one-off housing. That's not a comprehensive plan that looks at all of the considerations for developing that whole area. That's what we currently have. What we have over here is, just people be able to put in one house at a time, willy-nilly. So I beg to differ that, this is, no matter what everybody feels about it, the principle is we're not going to just go and develop one at a time. We're going to have a comprehensive plan.
So, Sarah, for what other options would you like to see us maintain that PUD designation along with the land uses that come with it?
Yeah, I mean,
Which is,
is there a reason to change it if
which is
that's-
hundreds of housing units and so on that go along with that.
Yeah, I think that
Okay.
that should be one of the options for sure.
So can that community be included in the open space
Absolutely.
for?
Yeah, we can
So-
actually include that as part of the
And
process.
we'll respond to those members of the public that are also saying that they need more housing
They want to see the
at the
PUD
same
move
time,
to a-
right? Because the people need to consider it all. Great, Joe.
So, there's quite a lot of agriculture within our community, and I do not see it reflected here at all. And Dante teased us earlier with communication with the farming community. And I'm very interested, you know, and I love having pumpkin patches in the middle of town and ag in the middle of town. It's really fun.
So among these shaded,
This was my fault, I didn't introduce that.
Finish my comments before all of you interrupt me, like Laura Sarah. Thank you. I would like to hear if Dante has input from the farmers, what their current thinking is. Thank you.
So I was going to say this, it's my fault I did not introduce the agricultural designation, which is on the map, and I'd like Peter to actually tell us where it is on these.
A lot of this green color that you see, and you all have it in your packets too, so you can see it in the maps that you have. Right here, this color agriculture it's called. You know, for example, in downtown focus plan, we're showing it here and here and here and here and here and here. Really, a lot of the land that is currently used for agriculture is designated as agriculture on a lot of these themes. And all of the land that is in greenhouse use is also designated as agriculture in these themes. So that's something, you know, is that the appropriate designation? That's something that should be considered.
Yeah, and
So
like,
why
I
don't
could
we
add to
see
what
that
Peter
on
was
color?
saying, after we met with them, one of the things that we kind of held sacred is no more erosion of the existing agricultural infrastructure that's in place in the community that gives us our heritage. And so that was kind of taken off there. So all of the ag that's shown is existing, and we didn't, we don't have anything proposed on the
Does that answer your question, Joe?
She wanted to hear from Dante.
Well,
I mean, I just have a little bit. So what we did is when we talked to the farmers, their issues obviously were how to sustain their farms for the next 20 years. And a lot of them are having trouble doing that. And so, you know, this discussion is kind of the 70,000 foot level view. We can put any color there and call it anything we want to. And I know that we're kind of getting into the weeds a little bit. All of that is going to be figured out once we get to zoning. We talked about specific projects and by the school. Those will all require traffic studies. I mean, this entire plan is actually going to go through an EIR process that's going to test all of this stuff. So all we're asking tonight is this good enough to go to the public and have them weigh in on it and then come back to you guys with it? But specifically, for instance, places like this, I think this is something like 73 acres or more, you had urban reserve. And you have property owners who have owned property for 35, 40 years
Could you
or so.
define where that is? We just can't tell from back here.
This
Yeah.
property here.
Sea Haven, okay.
It's just kind of urban reserve, and as
Yeah.
Bruce said, urban reserve is really kind of a holding pattern in our existing zoning that said after everything else is built out, you can build on it. What does that mean? I mean, it's kind of like, so what we're attempting to do is say, what do we want that to be? If we want it to be open space, let's just say it. If we want it to be agriculture, let's just say it. So I don't know if that helped or not.
So Dante, my question was specifically that you had a meeting with
Yes.
the farming folks, and I wondered what their specific thoughts were about
Housing,
this.
they were looking, farm worker housing, they're actually looking for ways to, and we kind of talked a little bit, I don't want to go too deep, but we talked about the concepts like they have in Napa and other places. You know, we have this farm to table. Could there possibly be a small area, you know, for retail to sell goods, oils and things I mean, it could be something that the town can get around. But it's really it's really very soon to talk about those details. Let's just determine kind of what the land use is gonna be. And once we talk about ag, we can kind of get into how much farm worker housing, if that's a need, you know, if there can be commercial, things like that.
I just wanted to follow up on what you said about it's too early to be talking about that. And I think this is, I guess one of my problems with the map is that it does feel like we have sort of the cart before the horse. And that we're looking at land use changes that are big blobs of change on the map. And what I don't see is the accompanying vision that comes behind that. You know, we're an ag and open space community that embraces the narrative that goes along with it, that, yeah, we do have value-added agricultural stands, we have farm-to-fork type of principles, we embrace our open space. And, you know, so I think just moving forward and when we bring it to the public, being able to craft a vision around it to where the blobs of land use changes aren't necessarily just as much of red flags as they are, but we're able to sort of conceptualize
That's
what's the
fair.
actual vision of the community.
Right. And you know, I guess it's my reluctance because I feel I haven't talked to enough people. You know, I need to talk to the first generation farmers and see where they're going. I know there's a group of younger farmers in the community. Where are they going? You know, people like Terry who have owned farms here, what do you say, 85 years? 88 years. You know, what's the future of her farm? So we need to talk a little bit more, and then we'll come back.
Want to keep it going, so
I don't mean to interrupt anyone, yeah.
Well, I have a question. I'm not understanding how because one of the things that was brought up at the beginning was affordable housing, and I don't know a lot about necessarily the different densities of housing. So maybe if you could clarify kind of where that might be accommodated and within the different scenarios or whatever you're calling it.
You mean high density housing or affordable housing?
You said affordable, like the feedback being that we need more affordable housing.
Right. So one of the things.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, one of the things we heard from, including some of the meetings we have done, is people are looking for a certain housing type that's townhouse, that's private open space, and maybe somewhat higher density, for example. So we want to allow for possibilities for that in some of these colors that you see.
So the orange.
Yeah. We haven't specifically said which is affordable, which is not affordable.
Okay, but that's what you're just saying is.
So the housing.
The housing element.
The housing element is available on the website. Coincidentally, that will be at the Planning Commission on November 25th. Is that what is it? November 25th. And we've had 5 meetings on it. But at any rate, we've satisfied the affordable housing numbers. Just in case anybody's interested in knowing, we update it every 7 years.
It should just be clarified that the housing element reflects the current general plan, not any of these proposed changes.
Well, and the housing element has a 7-year period, so that's assessing how much land do we need for housing, how many sites do we need for housing to accommodate people over the next 7 years, but this plan is also trying to be.
Especially 20-25 years. Such as farm worker housing.
So I don't mean to interrupt the discussion, but before you go to the public, I want to read back to the committee the 4 changes that I think we heard from them before we go to the public.
All right, but then we have to come back.
Yeah, I think people have some discussion.
Joe has something.
Oh, yes, please. He should speak first.
Okay.
Nothing already.
Joe's looking out for you.
On some unrelated things, I think there should be more active and future park plans throughout the city as well.
Park plan?
I think there's a lack of it in the northern part of the city. I also, I think the further connections with the commercial activities sprawled out through there, I think that's a form of urban sprawl that I usually don't appreciate, and I think it'll harm the character of the coast. And then one thing that we talked about at our early meetings was the economic viability of the city too, and how it's going to be a sustainable city and it doesn't have to rely totally on commuters. And I see a lack of designated office space throughout the city as well. So I think there has to be more thought as to where there can be more office space if people so not commuting over the hill and adding to the traffic. Good one.
Great. So, yeah, that was one of the principles, is that balance. And is that, can you just point out someplace where the office space?
So we did have a market assessment that looked
Yeah.
at the amount of office space necessary, and on each one of these three options was much more land than was needed under that market assessment.
For office space?
For office space.
The showcasing of the coast we have, I think,
There are some mixed-use sites that may have office on them, but we will definitely go back and double check and make sure we, if you're missing that on something, I mean, that's sort of a given that we need to have that. So if it's not in the showcasing the coast, Steve will double check and make sure it's there.
We specifically talked about incubator space for
Yes.
digital startups. Is that included in the office, or is that a separate category?
It's both in the office, mixed use, and industrial, depending on where it is.
Could be in any of those.
Is there a site that you'd like to,
No, I
have
guess-
some input in that regard?
I think we.
So I think not just located all in the downtown core is important. I think it could be spread out into some of the other northern areas.
You would like to see it in the downtown core.
He would like to see
Spread
some
out.
options
Spread out.
in the north.
Like to see
In
it
the north as
spread
well,
out
yeah,
more.
and we have in some of those.
Depending on the kind, because you don't want that sprawl.
Right.
Joe had some comment, and then Cameron, and then I think we'll go back and review what we've done so far, and then hear the public, and then come back. Does that sound okay?
Spread out.
Wait.
Office, what's that?
Office space in the north, as on one of the options. And we'll just check it, maybe in case it's already there.
So when we started this evening, I heard you say, being a student most of my life, I heard an assignment, which
great.
was to evaluate the three options with the 5 concepts. So while some of the presentation was going on, I did that.
Thank you.
I ranked them. And the difficulty I have with this particular process is that taking as a whole, I was not able to give a yes to a single of the 3 options for any of the 5.
That had
As a
all-
whole, if
Uh-huh.
you take them as a whole,
Uh-huh.
the 5, there was not a single one that I could say yes to on any of them.
That they reflected
That
all
they
of the
reflected-
principles.
That they reflected in any of them, any of them.
Any of the 6?
Any of the 6, if I took the entire presentation.
Uh-huh.
Which is, I believe what I'm hearing other people say, is that this particular process makes it very difficult because we're being told what the options are instead of asking us what our community wants. And what I hear our community wants is trails, bicycle and hiking that connects their city. They want open space, west of 1, and they do not want more traffic. They do not want more taxes for more infrastructure. So this is a difficult process for me because it's not coming from my community, it's coming top down.
And thank you so much for bringing that up, because I also want to remind, because last time I was here, I brought the initial round of information of community input. And it was robust. We talked to a lot of people in your community on the street. And we talked to people in interviews, and there was focus groups. So it is important that all of those voices, not all of those voices are in this room. And one of the things we'd really like this committee to do is to stay alert to those voices that aren't in the room. I'm thrilled that there are so many voices in the room, but there are a lot of voices that aren't in the room. And so we need to not ignore those voices, because we went through a really long process to get of diverse voices, and we presented all the information from those diverse voices to you in several iterations. So I just want to remember that so that we don't lose track of those people.
So for example, I've been in all these meetings and I've talked about, I heard no one say to me, we want a commercial enterprise at the end of Kelly. Not a single person, and that's just one example.
Yeah.
And I could go through all of these and say, I didn't hear a single person say, we wanted a roadway through Railroad Avenue. I didn't hear anybody say that. So, did somebody, okay, thank you. Ed did, okay, all right. Thank you, Ed. So bad example. But my point is, you're not asking us, you're not saying, this is our city, let's start with the existing general plan. This is our city today.
Well, it's not our city today. It's not your city today. This is the plan.
This is the plan for our city.
And there's a group of people that have a lot of problems with this plan.
But there are a group of people that like a lot about that plan.
Yeah, okay.
Whether they realize it or not. Whether they realize it or not, there's a significant component in that. There are many components in that map that they like. They may not realize what its current zoning is, but they like what they experience with that map right now. And I think that's where the disconnect is people's experience of what that map means may not be what the planning people see it as in zoning.
Okay.
For example, Surf Beach, Venice Beach, west of Railroad, the greater wave crest area, many people in our community think is already permanently protected open space. People have purchased homes and invested their entire personal livelihood in a piece of property that they live in, that they think is next to open space, and it's not.
Right, right.
Okay? So my point, going the long way around, is it's very difficult to look at 3 proposals that do not come from the community, but in fact are options that maybe components of them would be good,
Right.
but as they're presented, they are not.
Okay, so let me, thank you. And let me just say that the next process, again, is to create an option that is a preferred plan with input from a large swath of the community and get that input from the community, and then it comes back to this group again for working out the preferred plan. So the preferred plan is more what you're talking about. What do we want where? But in considering the larger public's input. But they haven't had the, and maybe there are corrections that need to be made to these themes to make it clearer to them of what they can work with. But when the public is actually working with this, again, we're not saying you need to choose one of these or that these are the right pieces. It's more like, these are ideas, what do you want the pieces to be? And they'll provide all the impact of saying, like that happens here. They'll say, we like this, we don't like that, and there'll be a whole broad range of opinions. And then all of that opinions will come back to this group so that you can actually work toward a preferred plan. So before we have more comment, I promise the public that they get a chance to talk.
Can I just, I'd like to ask something though, so I would like to see, I would like to see an analysis of a smaller growth rate or less growth, because if you're not even looking at that as an option. You're basically saying we're going to have exactly what we had before. And I raised the issue that it's not sustainable based on our existing traffic patterns. I would like to is that.
Yeah.
And, because you can't just put it aside. Like, what's driving us to move with this growth rate if it's not sustainable? If it's an out of date and it's not reality. Doesn't deal with our reality. So I want you. That's what I'm asking. Is one of the things that's done.
Right, for an additional option.
Yes.
And I did hear that loud and clear. And that is one of the things that is on the list, I believe. You want to go over the list and then we can do comments?
But
as I said.
it'll be key to Measure D. So, yeah, this will correspond to Measure D, so easily.
Okay, but you could still, I guess what I'm saying is that I want to see, if we had such a discussion about analyzing Foothill, why are we not discussing also analyzing what it would look like if we had a different growth build out, and that's not driven by the history. I'm putting that forth.
I'm going to just kind of summarize and say this roughly corresponds to Measure D and what's represented. We haven't got the fine-tuned numbers, but it is roughly corresponds to Measure D allowances.
She wants to see something less than Measure D.
If Measure D leads us to crazy traffic.
1%. Did you know that? 1%? 1%. 1%.
We've never hit it, except for 1 year.
Well, Measure D allows, it's a good opportunity. Measure D, at 1% allows roughly 75 to 80 units. We've been averaging about 25.
Per year.
Per year. So, Anyway.
So there were some things that the group put forward. Let's summarize those before we go and make sure that we're not repeating, because I think that was already taken in. So let's make sure we know.
Can I speak?
So we still haven't come back to
Cameron.
the issue
So,
that's project.
I think you should do a time check and see how far.
Yeah, because we have, it is past 8:30, which is the end of our
If you want to go till
meeting.
9, I mean, we're happy to be here as long as people want to be here.
Did you want to stay till 9?
I think the GPAC members should have a chance.
Yes, I agree. Thank you. Cameron, yes.
Well, first of all, I appreciate everybody being here, and it's 13 GPAC members here, so I applaud that. And
It's amazing.
everybody being here, so it's a start, and the fact of the matter is it almost looks like, in my opinion, it almost looks like you put a bunch of colors in different places, and just to kind of make I don't know, those three maps are pretty colorful. Almost looks like my daughter did something there, but I don't know. I don't know. I'm not trying to negate your efforts, but I'm just saying I hear there's a lot of inconsistencies. One, from the existing conditions. I don't see where all the parks are in these maps that are existing. And then there's one thing that kind of disturbs me is you put yellow for low density where John Carter Park is, where we have Shakespeare nights and stuff like that. So I think I see that in every map.
Oh boy, so you want to capture
So I mean,
that?
there's inconsistencies, and then you guys were talking about arable or the agriculture item, and we noticed that where Frenchman's Creek is up north on corridors and connections, there's high density surrounding Frenchman's Creek. Right now that's urban reserve ag. Right now it's current agriculture. So I don't know if you guys are talking about preserving agriculture. Yeah, I agree that traffic is key, and we got to figure out some solutions on that. And I think that you guys need to incorporate or at least expose the recent circulation element that we had that was done. It's outdated, I guess now it's 2 years ago, but I don't know if there are solutions in there or if there's any data that we can use off that going forward. There's a lot of studies that have been done, and I don't see a lot of that reflected on this stuff. So
You mentioned after Carter Park, which was the other one?
Something that was on IR.
Just surrounding,
Frenchman.
yeah, just below Frenchman's Creek. I don't know.
It's on the corridors and connections.
Yeah.
It's changed from agricultural to
circle
residential.
Yeah, with commercial, red commercial. So north, right there. Perfect. Nice.
That's loss of agricultural land right there.
And then the other thing I wanted to mention for everybody is in the existing zoning, open space, so the planning area for the existing general plan, I don't know if this is accurate, so tell me if I'm wrong, but this is what I'm reading. It shows on page 324 that we were doing, I think in the original existing conditions report, in chapter 3, open space that's current, I think it says we have 544 acres out of the 2,500 acres, that's 20% in my mind, is that right? Okay. Anyway, so we already currently have 21% of open space that's already, I mean, those are just numbers that you guys, that are reflected on just the existing general plan.
On the existing.
Yeah, so, but I want to echo that I'd like to see those numbers reflected in these maps.
And so just on the agricultural piece, because we talked about it.
That doesn't include urban reserve either, so. Yeah.
And that's the point. A lot of people think that urban reserve is agriculture. It's not.
Yeah, it's just being used.
So we have made sure that anything is zoned agriculture, we preserve it. And we're asking the community, we have this urban reserve land, what should we do with it? Should it be agriculture? As we have said on one of our maps, should it be something else?
Isn't it supposed to be conserved? Right? Is it conservation? No.
We're doing that's the purpose of this. We get to.
No, yeah, I know, but I'm just reminding myself of the zoning code.
So let's review what the input from GPAC has been. Have you?
Yeah, input only in regards to the changes to be made to these
Changes
fees, not
made to the fees.
all the other stuff. Yeah.
Yes, there's a lot of.
So one of the comments I heard is we need to push for more open space and other concepts.
So maybe.
More than that's appealing in any few of them.
Could there be a fourth one with open space?
No, we're gonna take one of these and increase
change
the
it.
open space in that concept, whichever
Okay.
has the highest property, increase that more. I also heard, and from Steve, I don't think there's a general consensus, but having more active parkland, and I think part of that relates to when we do the more open space, we try to quantify how much active parkland there is in each one of these concepts to respond to that.
So active parkland and also the central park.
So that's the third item here, is that people want to see a central park and some choices to be presented to the community about the location of that central park.
Yeah.
That's one thing I heard.
And just a clarifying question, the one that has the additional open space would have a lower development rate? Is that what?
You know, probably, but we don't, we have to actually crunch the numbers to know.
Okay.
I mean, because it just may be that the downtown has high density and we can get more open space as well, so I can't necessarily say that.
Okay.
Because some things lend themselves to more open space than others, so we need to match it to a theme that we're developing here, but definitely we need to show more open space in other concepts. I think we got direction that the Railroad Avenue here should not be a road. It should be looked upon as maybe as a bike ped trail and maybe not on the maps, right?
A bike trail, right? It's okay to go forward as a bike trail or walking trail? It's already a road.
It is a road.
Well, except that this area over here, we were looking at.
Could you point again with your body out of the way, sir?
Sure. Look at the bigger map here. It's not in the bigger map, but it's partially showing here.
Right.
So Peter, this is part of it exists over here and part of it doesn't. So maybe in this portion, we're having new development and maybe over here have a road, but for the rest of it, from Kelly all the way to Seymour over here, there is a road that exists in almost
No,
the entire portion.
It is not a road.
Not Kelly to Central.
It is
No,
not a
it's
road.
in a portion of it.
No, it's not a road.
It's a road from here to there, right? Some road.
It's not a road.
It's just a right of way.
It's open
It's a right of way,
space.
okay.
It's just open space.
So we are not looking to create a new road out here that runs from Kelly to Seymour here.
No.
So it'll be at most be a bike or a pet trail in one of the concepts.
You already got
You already have a trail there.
What about the coastal trail that runs parallel to that?
That's a separate issue, that's just going to continue showing it.
But
But I
Duplicity.
Trails close together.
why would you need both?
Yeah, I don't understand that. Why you would have another trail.
Wouldn't
So,
showcase
but,
anything different.
okay, I'm just summarizing what I heard from the
Yeah.
committee. If the committee now feels you don't even want to show a bike or pet trail in any option, we'll take it off.
If that's your resources in the
So,
central.
can everyone live with it that it goes off the table? Just- No? You would like to see both?
We're just open for discussion, we're not making decisions.
Right. And I think that's what I said, and one of the options is to have that as a bike or pet trail, but not have it on the other ones.
Okay.
Is that
Yes.
okay?
Yeah, I
Okay.
think we have to let the public
Yeah.
wrestle
And
with
then
some of this.
I have the last one, which is for the area north of Wave Crest, which is this area over here. In one of the options, we need to carry forward the PUD concept, which is to have more greater planning with the land uses that go with that, one of the concepts.
What about the west end of Kelly? About at least one of the maps showing.
Sure,
not
that's a
getting
good point, yeah. And not showing a hotel. is one of the
All of
options.
the property on
Are you
Kelly.
catching that, Catherine?
Yeah.
And
Good
we need
reminder.
also, I think we have to show something that addresses the issue with traffic. We're not showing a solution. What about widening Highway 1? We said that was still an option
Okay,
that we could study.
yeah. So could we include an option of Highway 1 widening in one of the options?
I'm not even sure that's practical, honestly. But we definitely can ask our
Point of information, Bruce, can you provide a 1 minute to an overview of what the circulation plan that we approved will do? I mean, it was a long-term plan, and there were priorities in that plan.
The three themes of the existing circulation elements approved last year rely heavily on connectivity, multi-mobility, and safety. And those are the three themes. So connectivity of the neighborhoods and allowing people to get around the neighborhoods, safety, and for all modes of traffic, and multi-mobility through different transit options. And the way that the Foothill Boulevard concept was addressed is that it looks practically difficult because a lot of intervening parcels have been developed where the alignment, as they explained, it was originally proposed in the previous circulation element. But we said, as opportunity, in the existing policy position right now of the current circulation element is that where opportunities exist, which means as funding opportunities may come forward or development occurs incrementally from here in this continuum for the next 25 years, we will take opportunities to get those connections, getting an improved access, whether it be through trails, a bicycle path, a road, or even a boulevard. So the understanding is even if we can get pedestrian trails, that's still better access because it allows people to get from neighborhood to neighborhood going north and south, and they don't have to use Highway 1. So that's kind of a snapshot of current themes and how the policy is addressing football. But there was no alignment shown. So there is still a policy that said their need exists. And the reason why it wasn't addressed in the previous circulation element, because we just looked at circulation and not land use, because now we're looking at circulation and land use in tandem, which is the right way to look at it. And the question has come up again, and we're trying to get some resolution on it. We're either going to get into it or get out of it.
So addressing the traffic somewhere is an issue that we heard from this.
It'd be irresponsible to say that traffic is not a problem here. We all know that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what I would say is that these, concepts respond in modest ways, as Bruce said, to seek connectivity where connectivity is possible. But we're not putting a big boulevard running through a new one when you're running through the town or something like that, because that's not what we heard from people, or it's the current situation.
Yes.
The current circulation element also has some strategies for Highway 1, which they don't widen the road, but they add some lane capacity in certain locations, some turning capacity, some frontage roads, and some consolidation of intersections that should help traffic flow. So it does, in modest ways, even within the Highway 1 corridor, address existing traffic issues. But as Bruce said, it shouldn't take into account anything, the relationship between land use over the next 25 years and the roadway capacity. It's more of a snapshot of that.
So is there a way to include some of that information about the options that the current circulation
Absolutely.
has?
One of the things we will do is we will actually present the general plan as along with the three concepts, which may address some of the issues that some people raised as the general plan.
Okay, I promised the public comment, but I also, GPAC is over by 20 minutes, the time that we asked you to stay. But we want to accept public comment. For those of you that are willing to continue to stay and listen to it, is that okay?
Yes.
Because it's your meeting. Okay, so I know. So I didn't keep track of everyone, and I don't have numbers. So if you'll be honest with me and tell me who was the first person to have their hand up. George. I love this team. Wow, George. They're looking out for you.
I'm actually embarrassed.
Don't get used to it.
I'll try to be brief and pump in as much as I can.
Speak up.
Speak
up. Speak up.
Stand up.
Yeah.
You're really going to rub it in, aren't you, Les? I'm starting to feel a little deja vu. I look around the room and I see some familiar faces from 2004, 2005. We had 70-some meetings, public meetings that were, this is nothing. This is child's play. These were contentious meetings, some going till 11, 12, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, sometimes 3, 4, even 5 days in a week, over exactly this. And what we had back then, and I don't want to see, excuse me, reframe that, whether I want to see it or not is irrelevant. I don't think it's appropriate. I don't think it's a good thing for Half Moon Bay to see it again, is the extremes. The one side of the left or the right, the no growth versus growth, and I'm getting that feel. And I'll give you an example. It's actually several. I've heard people talking recently about no development west of Highway 1. Baloney. Everything needs to be on the table. I know as a property owner on the west side of Highway 1, for somebody that has been in the family for 120 years, if somebody told me I can't develop it, guess what? The first thing I'm going to do is turn in a subdivision map, and I'm not going to be chopped, but you can call me Junior. I can live with that. That's okay. So these are things that need to be considered. And in order to do that, it requires balance. Everybody has to listen to everybody else, whether you like what they say or not. I've heard comments here tonight that I didn't much care for. I've heard them before, I'm sure I'll hear them again. I've heard other comments here that I like a lot, and I've heard them before, I'll hear them again. But there has to be balance between both extremes. There has to be some middle ground. So when I hear somebody say, well, should we leave this on the table as an option to present to the public, my initial blush is, hell yes. You're darn right, because this is a small group of people. Half Moon Bay has a population of almost 12,000. It used to be over 12,000. People have moved out. It will be 12,000 again and beyond. And we're talking about a plan that is going to extend into the next generation and very likely beyond that. So this will be my grandchildren's deal and going forward. So we need to temper. It's great to be enthusiastic. It's great to be passionate. And I have my own beliefs, and a lot of you here know what they are. And that's okay. But I am happy to sit on my beliefs for the benefit of the many, of the great. So we really need to take, it's incumbent on the city to get as much participation as possible. It's also incumbent on us to get as much public participation as possible. Because what we really want is not total open space or no open space. Open space has a cost. How about we diagnose that? How about we look at it and say, okay, open space. What about open space over here? What's the cost over here? What's it going to cost us? What's it going to bring us? Some areas, it's going to bring us more than it's going to cost us. Other areas, it's going to cost us more than it's going to bring us. So to have a blanket of any kind, to me, is irresponsible. We've been there, we've done that. Please, let's not make the same mistake again. We went through this in 2004, 2005. Foothill, good example. We're crying about circulation, rightfully so. The roads suck. For me to come to Safeway from the south side of town, to head up to Safeway at 5:30 in the afternoon on a weekday is damn near an act of God in Congress. I mean, the only thing missing is President Obama. It's unbelievable. Traffic is backed up past James Ford. What am I supposed to do? So I need something so I can't get it. The circulation is critical. We have service level F. We've had it for 12 years, at least. Probably longer than that, actually. So we need to think about options, whether we like them or not. Anything is possible, I believe. It's just a matter of imagination. And if we all work together and sacrifice a little to get a little, and work together and try to stay away from the polar extremes and work more towards the middle, I think we'll have a better result for everybody going forward. That's my 2 cents.
Hey, who was next? Thank you, George.
I just need a clarification from Rajiv. He did mention wave crests in the PUD under the change section, but you really didn't, I didn't understand exactly what you meant by that.
One of the options suggested, and I think you would agree with that, was that there is an existing PUD. The PUD boundaries are not drawn here, but this gray area represents a planned unit development. And there was interest, some people believe the current general plan is superior to maybe anything we've shown in any of these options. So to carry forward that PUD into one of the concepts. And so we draw the PUD boundary and we say what the PUD currently represents and we show that.
Thank you. And that was one of the recommendations?
Yes.
Yeah, great. So who was next?
I was next.
Okay, I like an honest man. Yes, sir.
He mentioned 12 years back, we were looking at the traffic issues here going back 15, 20 years when Pacific Ridge was first suggested. And and also for Beechwood. And so I remember from the residents, I went looking into that and I did some computer simulations of traffic on the peninsula. And the thing is that what the traffic engineers did here on the coast was they only looked at Highway 1 on the coast. And they looked at some of the feeder roads, and that's all they did. And then they crowed about being traffic engineers and that amateurs shouldn't throw up any contradictory evidence. What I did was I took a look at the peninsula, of course 280, 101, 84, all of that. And the thing is, the conclusion I came to is, just like in computer networks, which is what I built it on, was that on the weekends we would need something like 280 over here in order to balance the flows if you had conduits across the hill. I mean, that's what you would need because on good weekends they all come here. And the thing is, the only way to constrain that traffic is to do what we're doing now, is to throttle it by size. Unless you do what computer networks do, is that they have guardians at the end of the network saying, no, you're out, you're out, you're out. We don't allow that. So the only way to do it.
Do that here?
So the only way to do it is to actually make the conduit itself the throttle. It's as big as it can sustain. So if it's level F is in fact your savior. If it wasn't level F right now, they would just glut it to make it. So if you put 3 highways on top of each other, it'll fill. That's just the way it is. It's just like gas in an enclosed space. So that's just a traffic thing that he said there wasn't an answer to the traffic. I believe there is. You've got to constrain it because otherwise it grows out of bounds.
Thank you.
I think the restraint really is 92. In other words, that's the choke point. That will not allow more people to come into Half Moon Bay, and that's the choke point that we're talking about. But Highway 1, if you enlarged it to 4 lanes throughout the whole city, the standard for the Caltrans is that you have a 12-foot shoulder and a 5-foot walkway. So that solves the problem of connecting the neighborhoods together because you now have a sidewalk that would continue all the way through. So my feeling is that you have lots of plans, and I agree. There's lots of ways to try and do things. I mean, I've lived next to Beechwood and Pacific Ridge for 18 years, and yeah, I'm real familiar with the representative from Alianto Properties here. The Foothill Boulevard would have worked if Alianto's Properties was willing to sell off a few of the lots at the edge, but it would be crazy because the noise level would be incredible. So the idea here is you're not going to create, and I mentioned earlier, you can't create, you can't, under the guise of trying to connect the neighborhoods, you're really trying to create another parallel road to Highway 1. Not going to happen. And so I agree that you want to keep the traffic, you want to throttle it, but 92 is the throttle. And if Highway 1 was widened, it would help all of us that live here.
Okay. Highway 1 widening. I think you were next. Is that right?
I'll take it.
Okay, all right. Yes, sorry.
This falls under the category of a couple of things that were left off.
Okay, yes, please, yes.
And that is some kind of serious conversation with the county to solve those seasonal gridlocks on 92, because that stretch of the highway is county, not city. Something's got to be done. I think needs to be included in the discussion of how is the city going to work with the county to get that solved at the amusement park on 92. Second thing is, another thing that came up at that transportation meeting this week was the use of the waterfront. We're a coastal community. We're not just the harbor. Okay. The idea came up of high-speed ferry boats from the end of Kelly or the end of Poplar to Pier 39. Using the waterfront, especially on our peak tourist and street festival times of year. The problem is get people off of 92 and get them here, get them off the road. All kinds of, I want to respond to the gentleman who said that there's nothing up there that solves the traffic. The peak commuter hours, the gridlock is tied into the school system and the busing situation. Something has to be done about that morning gridlock. It can't take kids an hour to get from Montera to the high school. So we're already at carrying capacity now. We're not going to get a 4-lane highway because the Coastal Commission is going to say no to a 4-lane highway. So we have to seriously discuss ways to reduce the amount of cars that we're using now. Shuttles, bicycles, whatever we can do, school buses, and boats.
Horses.
Boats, horses.
Thank you. Thank you. So that may not be those may not be general plan suggestions, but they are suggestions that could be included in further discussion. So it's just not the kind of thing that goes in a general plan, is that right?
Well, you asked for all of the stuff from the committee about what we need to talk about. Why not talk about using the waterfront and a high-speed ferry system, or even using the airport, getting a commercial airliner to take us in helicopter from Hampton Bay Airport to SFO, so we can make our flights.
Yeah. So, 2 more comments? I'm sorry, I think you were next.
Yeah, well, one of the issues that I see is all this talk about traffic and this safety and so forth and connectivity. And all of these plans involve development on either side of Highway 1, and there's been no discussion whatsoever of how
humans get across Highway 1. I mean, this is a big problem in the community, is we're always getting nocturnal dog walkers mowed down by cars on Highway 1. I mean, we need some sort of system of pedestrian overpasses or some raising bridges so we can have underpasses. There's been no discussion whatsoever about how people get across Highway 1.
Okay, so a pedestrian piece, is that possible to add something like that? We'll talk about it, okay. See, you can show that I have no idea. And you? Thank you.
Couple things. I always thought that there was a real missed opportunity not putting in a roundabout at Main Street and Highway 92 to help encourage more traffic, or let's just say more shoppers to go to Main Street. I guess it's too late for that now because of some of the recent development that's happened there, but it really seems like a missed opportunity to me. Also, I was wondering, I haven't read through your entire plan here that you've given to the committee, so I'm sure it's included in there somewhere. But it would be helpful if we could see next time some maps that showed an overlay for two things: for projected sea level rise and also for tsunami inundation. And then flooding would be good too. And I know there are creek flooding issues. Of course, there's erosion that's happening. So some of those things could potentially eat into some of the green space. And of course, you know, if you're going to build new residential housing in an area that's within, you know, a tsunami inundation area or flood zone or a sea level rise area, it's good to know those things in advance for planning like this. So I know the county is embarked on some sea level rise planning efforts, and in fact, I know the Half Moon Bay planner, yes, I've seen him there, so I know he's involved, which is great. And it seems like a really good opportunity to start to think about those things and incorporate them into the mapping. Thank you.
Thank you. And this gentleman, and then over here, and then I think we're going to have to wrap up. Yeah.
To the issue of things that might be missing in the alternatives to the public, this was, we kind of nibbled around the edges with several people. And you described that this is going to go through an EIR process as well. In a thorough EIR process, there's always a no project alternative. Now, while I'm sensitive to the fact that we want to provide for aging in place and senior housing, it might be considered that everybody has said that Peter said any development will contribute to our traffic problems. There really is no way to make the cars go away. We'd like to think there is, but they won't go away. They come here on the weekends, we live here, and then we're a fixed number, but people come here. So there should be considered here with the proviso and the exception for senior low-income farmhousing, the special categories that we value in the community, no net growth beyond that. Because without that, slow growth is just a slower form of getting to this place looking like Pacific. You know, you've got to decide what's your end game, not 20 years from now, 50 years from now. We are geographically isolated enough that we can control our own fate. And if we say, this is our urban growth limit, we place that on there. And I think it would be good to articulate this in this plan.
As a very low development option. No to low development option. Yes, sir.
The two greatest concerns of the public are the open space and the traffic. Now, Rajiv even said the public wants more open space. I'll state the obvious. You can't make more open space. You can only preserve what you've got. And I just urge the commission here, the committee, preserve our open space. That's what gives us our town, our character, our charm, our uniqueness. It's why we live here. It's also why all those tourists come over the hill every weekend. If we turn this into San Mateo or Redwood City, it would hardly be worth living here for us. Our properties and values would go down because of that, and the tourists would stop coming over the hill. Our restaurants, our hotels, our shops would lose most of their income. Our town would lose most of its tax dollars. Keep the open space. Secondly, traffic. Three options. Foothill is a non-starter, legally, physically, environmentally, financially, not even a non-starter. The other alternative I see in all these maps is roads connecting the neighborhoods. Sounds kind of neat, sounds kind of fun, but our neighborhoods are not built for that. We cannot be the parallel to Highway 1. They're small town neighborhoods, small streets, kids, dogs, pets in the streets. We can't have our little neighborhoods with the small roads opened up to traffic with people trying to speed through, beating the time they would have made on Highway 1. We just can't do that. Third, the only last alternative, most obvious, is just Highway 1. Widen it to 2 lanes each direction, all the way up and down the coast, with a shoulder wide enough for pedestrians and bikes with a barrier in between the traffic. I think that would solve most all of our traffic problems.
Thank
That's
you.
it. Thank you.
Thank you. And so we're just about at the end. So, and I know there are more public comments, but I would like to ask, because we've already asked the committee to stay over more than a half hour. But this is just the beginning of the process, as Dante has explained. There are also public comment forms back there. Please do use those public comment forms. They will also be reviewed. And, but I think we're going to have to wrap it up. Dante?
And just so you guys know, thank you guys for staying a little bit late tonight. Thank you for hearing. Thanks to the public for coming out. We're going to take your comments and we're going to make some revisions. We're going to do kind of an intensive discussion with our community, and we're going to use a lot of different tools, workshops, neighborhood meetings. So there will be a lot of activity, just getting comments. And then we'll come back to you guys and talk to you guys again about what we just said and talk about kind of the next steps. There's also going to be a, like I said before, a planning commission study session on
December
8th. On this December 9th, it's going to be a planning commission study session. You know, we'll make the revisions, but it's also an opportunity for the public to come out and let the planning commission know what you guys think. They won't be making a decision. There'll be nothing for them to consider adopting, approving. They are just going to get up to speed and understand what the community feels about these options. And then, same thing with the planning commission, with the city council. On the 20th, we're going to have a study session. Not going to approve anything, but it's another opportunity. Barring that, any other questions or anything from the GPAC people? Yes.
I apologize if I missed it. Did you say when our next meeting would be for this particular?
I don't know yet. But we're going to be actually putting together kind of an outreach schedule, when the workshops are going to be. And actually, what we need is we need GPAC members actually to help us to kind of plan that and kind of work with people through the workshop. So more to come. I don't have an exact date yet.
So is it soon or in the next?
It will be in the new year. It's not going to be within the next month. The workshops we're looking to have the workshops end of January, February.
Oh, after, okay.
Right, after the new year. So it's a long horizon, guys. It's not a decision we're going to be making right now.
Now, the workshops and the things we just discussed, are those open to the public?
They're for you. Thank you guys very much.